PRB meetings, which was a terrible thing and caused a lot of pain in our community. And we were not the only government or organization to suffer such an attack. Just recently, I believe it was the city of St. Pete, and there are too many to count. So there have been a few calls to perhaps forego our digital participation platform. But at this point, I think we can't let these bullies, we can't let these bad actors stop us from inviting the public to participate, especially during this pandemic, by any means necessary. So I would just like to say, during public comment today, please be aware that there is a risk that somebody may make a bad comment. We will be on it, but this is a warning that something like that may happen. So please be advised. We'll do our best to control it, but unfortunately, in this day and age, this is something that we have to deal with. So if you might if you would be unduly upset by something that may be said, perhaps you should, take a walk outside of the commission chambers or tune out during public comment if that would offend you. So with that being said, Ms. Kendall, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Meyer,
Here in person.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Here and in person.
Commissioner Bruner,
Here in person.
Commissioner Matheson.
Here in person.
Before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please stand and join me for a moment of silence for all of those that we have lost tragically to this terrible COVID and novel coronavirus crisis. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. First, today we have a proclamation, our proclamation for Juneteenth, Freedom Day. Mr. Mortel, would you kindly read the proclamation?
Proclamation, Juneteenth Freedom Day, June 19th, 2020. Whereas Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the abolition of slavery in the United States and the emancipation of African American slaves, and celebrates and successes gained through education and greater opportunity. And whereas Union soldiers landed at Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865, with news that the war had ended and the enslaved were now free. On that first Juneteenth, the people of Texas were read General Order Number 3, which stated, quote, "The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." And whereas the first Juneteenth celebration was a time for reassurance, prayer, and the gathering of family members, today, Juneteenth continues to grow within communities and organizations throughout the country. Numerous local and national Juneteenth organizations have arisen alongside older organizations with the common mission of promoting and cultivating knowledge and appreciation of African American history and culture, while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all people and cultures. And whereas, on a larger scale, celebration of Juneteenth reminds each of us of the precious promises of freedom, equality, and opportunity, which are the core of the American dream. And whereas on Friday, June 19th, 2020, at 11 a.m., Faith in Florida and the NAACP hosted a prayer service at the Martin County Courthouse in Stuart, Florida, encouraged all residents to celebrate it as a day of remembrance and celebration. Now, therefore, I, Michael J. Meyer, Mayor of City of Stuart, Florida, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2020 as Juneteenth Freedom Day.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Is Alicia Harriel here to receive the proclamation?
She's outside, but Pete is also here. Okay, she's coming. Okay, Faith in Florida.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harriel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This proclamation, do we have somebody take a photo?
Man, Mr. Mayor, can we get Aces of Stuart up there with you also?
Please.
Might want to stand in the center with the logo behind you.
Our logo.
Nice.
Thank you both. Would you like to say a word or two?
Just giving thanks. Just giving thanks to the City of Stuart for recognizing Juneteenth, always being there to partner with our community, coming out to just show leadership. We really appreciate you from the City of Stuart and also the residents of Martin County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ariel, and thank you for helping organize that amazing event on Friday.
That's yours.
Oh, Ms. Ariel, that's for you to take. Thank you very much. Next, we have Pride Month proclamation for the month of June 2020. Mr. Mortel?
Whereas Stuart is a community that values diversity and inclusion and is committed to equal rights and opportunities for all its citizens. And whereas Stuart recognizes the important contributions of its LGBTQ residents to the city's history, culture, economy, and civic life. And whereas we celebrate the accomplishments of the LGBTQ community towards securing important rights and freedoms, often through struggle and adversity. And whereas we remain vigilant against continued oppression and discrimination against the LGBTQ community and against any new political efforts to overturn these accomplishments. And whereas we affirm our support for the LGBTQ residents and stand with them to protect their civil rights and ability to live openly without fear. And whereas on June 15th, 2020, by a vote of 6-3, the court ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employers from discriminating because of a person's sex, among other factors, now includes sexual orientation and transgender status. Now, therefore, I, Michael J. Mayer, Mayor of the City of Stuart, Florida, do hereby proclaim June 20th, 2020 as Pride Month in the City of Stuart, Florida, and encourage all residents to celebrate our proud and diverse LGBTQ community.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Some may think that this proclamation and the preceding are political. I disagree. These proclamations are our way in our local government of celebrating the American dream, celebrating and validating what we say when we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which is a country with liberty and justice for all. Amen. All means all. All means all. No matter the color of your skin, how much money you have in the bank, who you are, who you choose to love. So this is in celebration of the Supreme Court's historic ruling last week that got us one step closer to the fulfillment of the promise of the American dream. And receiving today are Barbara and Gary Silver, the founders and my friends, the founders of our local PFLAG Stuart chapter. Are they available on, I believe they're zooming in.
You can just say camera, you can see my forehead.
Barbara and Gary, yes, hold on one second.
Hi.
Hey, okay, we're here. We are here.
Hi, Mrs. and Mr. Silver. Will you please just say your names and give a brief couple words about PFLAG Stuart?
Okay, I'm Barbara Silver.
Gary Silver.
Gary Silver. And I'll just tell you, so this is an exciting month for us too. It marks the 3-year anniversary of our PFLAG Stuart chapter. And our leadership team also includes Eric Turner and Susie James. We've grown. We meet the second Wednesday of the month at Starstruck Theater in Stuart on Keener Highway. PFLAG, for those of you who don't know, stands for Parents, Friends, lesbian, gay, and the whole spectrum of LGBTQ+. We are a support and education and advocacy group. We've helped many, many people's friends, families, and people of the community. We've been into the school systems. We worked with Martin County Schools, and we've seen a lot of progress. So we're here. We have a Facebook group, a website.
Right.
Yeah, PFLAG's been around for
45
close to
years.
50 years.
Right.
They have 200 chapters across the country. We are fortunate and we are honored to have one in Martin County, and we're expanding up to Port St. Lucie. So we have over 200 members, and it's thrilling. So thank you for giving us a home in Stuart. We feel we're connected to the community.
Thank you, Mrs. Silver. And I'll just say, as a young boy, I sure could have used an organization like yours. So thank you for serving those 200 and many more people out in our community that just need a little support and a little love. Thanks.
Thank you. And next year we will have a Pride, hopefully a Pride Fest, and over the coronavirus. So thanks.
Thank you all. Moving on to item number 3, a proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month for the month of July 2020. Mr. Mortel.
Proclamation Park and Recreation Month, July 2020. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Stuart, Florida, and our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, and whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect underground, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and to recreate outdoors. And whereas the city of Stuart recognizes and the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be it resolved by Michael J. Meyer, Mayor of the city of Stuart, that July is recognized as Park and Recreation Month in the city of Stuart, Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. And receiving, we have the one and only Jessica Tharp. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything that you do in our community services.
Thank you. If I could say one thing, since 1985, America has celebrated July as the nation's official Park and Recreation Month. Created by National Recreation and Park Association, Park and Recreation Month specifically highlights the vital and powerful role local parks and recreation, such as the City of Stuart, play in conservation, health and wellness, and social equity efforts in communities all across the country. This year, we are strong, we are confident, we are selfless, we are passionate, we are driven, we are essential. We are parks and recreation. From providing after-school care and summer camps to exciting sports leagues and everything in between, the City of Stuart has a wide variety of programs that are not only fun, they also bring the community together. In fact, we have partnered with Volunteers in Medicine Clinic to kick off Parks and Recreation Month with a fitness challenge. Every week, a new #ThemFitFest challenge will be provided by Volunteers in Medicine Clinic leading up to our partnered FitFest event slated for October 3rd, 2020 at Flagler Park. NRPA and the city are encouraging everyone to get out there and be Parks and Recreation in their own way at their local parks and recreation centers. Our local parks and recreation directly contribute to reduced obesity rates, an improved ecosystem, and increased property values. The City of Stuart is leading initiatives and providing opportunities for people of all ages to achieve healthier lifestyles, promote and understand nature and conservation, as well as bringing the community closer through a variety of programs and services. NRPA and Volunteers in Medicine also encourages everyone that supports Parks and Recreation to share how they are passionate for Parks and Recreation with the hashtag #WeAreParksandRec. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tharp. Next, we have our service awards, one of my favorite things we do. Let's see, I have Mr. Sergio Picori for 20 years of service.
20 years, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Picori. I will be taking your Publix gift card. And for Employee of the Month, I'll recognize Chief Tuminelli.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chief Tuminelli. I'm not the employee of the month.
I will recognize.
I'm definitely not the employee of the month.
Recognize Chief to speak.
Just FYI. I would like to recognize my administrative assistant, Ms. Lisa Scott. If you can come up. So really briefly, a story. Lisa was coming here under the guise of something else, and she told me that she wasn't going to be coming. I said, no, you have to come. You're nominated for Employee of the Month, so here she is. So the Stuart Police Department is pleased to nominate Lisa Scott for the Employee of the Month of June. Lisa is currently the executive assistant to me. She's commonly known as the Colonel, the #2 in the department.
All right.
She's been with the Stuart Police Department for 33 years.
Amen.
Lisa is the backbone of the agency. Throughout her career, Lisa has worked in different departments, becoming proficient in every administrative function. Lisa sets the bar as an exemplary employee. She is always cheerful and ready to work, giving 100% to every task she is assigned. Lisa also volunteers her time to take part in many walks, cleanups, and other activities in the city on her days off. Lisa is always willing to help others by donating PTO time to employees who are in need. During these unprecedented times, Lisa has remained steadfast in her duties and adapted to change by continuing to meet all deadlines, completing payroll, which is a nightmare on Mondays, and ensure all functions of the police department continue seamlessly. Lisa always goes above and beyond and still makes time for her other duties. On top of her regular duties, Lisa currently serves as the secretary for the Stuart Police Officers Association, which is SPOA. She also serves on the board of directors of the Stuart SPD Community Foundation. And in her newest venture, she's an advisor for the Stuart Police Department Explorer Post, working with the youth who inspire to learn not only to be becoming a law enforcement officer, but about life. It is without a doubt that Lisa Marie Scott is an extremely valued employee at the police department. We would not be the same without her warm smile greeting us in the morning and wishing us a wonderful evening at night. Lisa's willingness to always help those in need of assistance and her drive to go out of the way to make sure everything is right is should be an example to all of our employees. I've personally commented on numerous occasions that we could use a couple dozen more Lisas. Lisa is not only the staple to the city, but to the community as well. And for these reasons, we believe that she is the best nominee for Employee of the Month and probably the all-decade team.
Yay, Lisa.
Her face is really red under that mask.
Did you know that David asked her to come over here with him and she said no?
And she refused to come with me.
Just thought I'd mention that.
She wanted to work for me.
She couldn't leave the department.
Thank you. Would you like to say?
Anything else we can embarrass you with?
Please. Oh, this is quite a surprise. As Chief said, he told me someone was receiving a service award that he wanted me to attend, and I thought, oh, okay, no problem. Then I realized I had an errand that I had to get to the pharmacy to get my medicine, so I wasn't going to come. And then he texted me and said, where are you? I got to get to the pharmacy. And he's like, no, you got to come over here. So I kind of got ordered to come, and on the way I found out that it was this. So, yeah. City Manager Dias and I have worked together since he started here. So of course it was very tempting, his offer to come over and be his assistant, but the police department is like my baby, my home. So this is really cool. Sorry.
Thank you. That's what it's all about. Okay, moving on to the Department of Health update. We'll have either Carol Vitani or Ms. Renee Rouse.
Hi there, this is Carol Ann Vitani, the Health Officer for the Florida Department of Health. Thank you all so much again for allowing us to provide information and updates on COVID-19 in our community. Currently in Martin County, there are 1,582 positive cases, with unfortunately 20 deaths. Our positivity rate is 10.8%, which is above the state average of 6.2. The median age for our positive cases in Martin County has definitely gone down, and our median age is 38 years old, with the majority of cases in the age range of 25 to 54. Seems to be somewhat consistent with the entire state. In the last 10 days, since June 12th, Martin County has seen approximately 541 positive cases. 38% of the cases are from the Indiantown area in the zip code 34956. And 42% are in the zip codes of 34994, 34997, which encompass parts of Stuart, Jensen Beach, Golden Gate, and Port Salerno. All of this information is available on the Florida Department of Health COVID-19 interactive dashboard. And on Saturday or over the weekend, the Department of Health issued a public health advisory which encouraged the use of cloth face coverings and social distancing, encouraging high-risk populations such as those who are 65 and older and those with chronic health conditions to limit interactions outside the home, and emphasize that all individuals refrain from participating in gatherings of more than 50 people. As we all know, it's going to take time and research to fully understand COVID-19, but what we do know is that this virus is here and it has no boundaries and does pose serious health risks, including deaths, especially for those who are 65 and older and those with underlying chronic health conditions. Our focus here at the Department of Health continues to be case investigation and contact tracing. This is our focus and our main mission. As you know, with contact tracing, it is essential to stop the spread because it provides our team with the opportunity to talk one-on-one with the cases and their contacts, and also provide specific instructions on what people should be doing to prevent further transmission. Daily, we continue to work very closely with our long-term care and assisted living facilities to ensure that staff and there are following infection control protocols and are protecting our most vulnerable citizens. Testing, as you know, Florida Community Health Centers and the NAACP coordinated a testing event over the weekend, this past Saturday. Approximately 205 tests were collected during that event. Florida Community also continues to offer free drive-through COVID-19 testing in Indiantown, and that continues Monday through Friday at their location on Warfield Boulevard. and their number is 772-597-3596. Also, Cleveland Clinic, as you know, continues to offer their drive-up testing by appointment through their nurse triage line. And that's daily also 772-419-3360. So in closing, I want to continue to reinforce the message of prevention. As you know, we do not have a vaccine, and so we must all take preventative measures to protect ourselves and our families, our elderly, and the people who take care of us at the hospital. Everyone can take steps to stop the spread of this virus through good hand washing, staying home when you're sick, social distancing, the use of a cloth face covering, and frequent cleaning of those high-touch surfaces. We truly are grateful, I must say, for the support of the City of Stuart. You all are amazing, and all of our partners who are helping us to spread the word about prevention. We ask that you work collaboratively with us to post informational bulletin boards within the city's limits that feature prevention tips, and continue to share prevention information by any means possible. We have also spotted your electronic billboards. We were talking about them, and also would like the opportunity to work collaboratively with those as well. So although, you know, we say we sound like a broken record, but, you know, prevention is our best medicine, and we'll keep pushing that message. So thank you all so much again for all your support and for this opportunity to give you an update. And does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Vitani. Yes, Commissioner Matheson?
Yes, Mr. Vitani, one quick question. Could you just explain or discuss what should someone do if they believe they've been in contact with someone who's tested positive? What are the steps they should take directly?
Okay. Well, if they feel that they've been in contact with someone, they certainly can call us here, and we would be able to advise them. And also, they could call their private provider, especially if they are feeling any types of symptoms or anything. But, you know, we do have our hotline, which is available Monday through Friday, and they would just call the 772-221-4000 number and hit #9, and that will take them to someone that will speak directly with them regarding their concerns.
Thank you.
Ms. Wegner, I just would like to ask, well, thank you for, especially to you and to Ms. Rouse for dealing with my frequent pestering and calls and questions, and for all of the support. I know you're in a tough position.
No, never. Please, you're not a pest at all. We welcome you, you know, calling us. We thank you for supporting us, and we thank you for asking us to join this meeting. So please, you can call us anytime. You have our cell phone numbers, really Monday through Sunday. So no problem.
As I tend to do anyway.
We're in this together, so, you know, really, no problem at all.
I know that, for instance, yesterday's event, or rather Saturday's event, the Helping Hands in East Stuart at the NAACP offices, I thought went really well. I know that was primarily organized as far as the health component with FCHC, but I do know that tests did run out before the event was over. And so I understand that there is a lack as far as your capabilities when it comes to contact tracing. And I just wanted to know, I understand the position you're in. Is there anything that we can do as a local government? Is there any support that we can give you, whether it be through a letter to the state, whatever we can do to help encourage more funding for contact tracers or help you recruit new ones? Is there anything that we can do? Since it seems like that is kind of a tight spot for us.
I'm sorry, Mayor, did you say that, because we right now are currently fully staffed, and we're in good position right now with our contact tracing and the number of individuals that we have.
Okay.
We also, we evaluate this daily, and, and we can expand if needed. And
Okay.
yeah, but we appreciate that, and definitely would reach out if ahead of time if we saw something where we would need assistance. No, I appreciate your offer.
Thank you, Ms. Vitani. Are there any questions before we move on? Thanks again. Okay, we'll move on to comments by the commissioners. Commissioner Bruner, do you have any comments?
No.
Commissioner Matheson?
Well, I'd just like to say that we're right in the heart of the rainy season. Lake Okeechobee has increased, an inch in 24 hours. It's at 12.34 feet right now. We are still below the historical average of today, which is 13.12. But I've been in communication with Lieutenant Colonel Polk. There's only so much the lake can absorb if we keep getting these rain events. But I'm incredibly thankful that we started the wet season with a significantly lower lake level than historical average. And that extra capacity has made it so far up until now, and hopefully into the future, we have had 0 discharges from the lake. And then I'd just like to encourage everyone out there listening to, please treat everyone during these times with respect and dignity. And forget the power that you might be emboldened to have when you're behind a keyboard. And when you write something or communicate through a keyboard or screen, I think this country would be a lot better off, or the world would, if we all just imagine sitting there and having a cup of coffee with that person that you're going to type these words to, and think if you'd really say them right to their face. And odds are you might not if you were about to type something hateful. So treat everyone with respect. Do unto others as you would hope they'd do to you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor?
Oh, thank you. I like 4 or 5 things. Number 1, I came to Martin County as a transportation planner. And one of my big jobs was to sit out in the hot sun and do some traffic counts, because downtown Stuart at the time didn't want to make changes in the roadway system and have a Roosevelt Bridge because they thought it would kill the downtown area. And I am so saddened that just since the late 1990s, that now we have a bridge that has a failure, and it's just amazing. But I just wanted to just bring that up. And of course, we know that there are lots of issues going on about names of places and bridges and their relationship that was done through the war on poverty. And there are just so many things. But I'm hoping that the DOT can work with it so that we can have our traffic pattern back and we can have our bridge back. So that's good. I just wanted to just bring that up. I'm sure that you'll probably say more about it, bring us up to date on it. Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. So glad that you did that proclamation and that we had that meeting in the community. And just to see the caliber of people who come out and who celebrate and who want to know, want to learn more. We have a very short history here in the United States, simply because of how we evolved over time from Britain to here, from Africa to here, and compared to other nations that have eons and eons of history. So whatever it is, we need to learn as much as we can about what has happened to all of us during that short time. And I think for a lot of people, this was their first time with Juneteenth, but I appreciate you, Mayor, coming out to the gazebo, and Miss Alicia Harrell with the Faith in Florida group and the community group, the African American citizens of East Stewart, and just citizens in general who wanted to say, I want to know what's going on. This is my country, and I want to be able to participate and to know. And for those who didn't know, on your calendar, just like December 25th, January 1st, any other date, put down Juneteenth, June 19th. Google and learn about that and see what you can do to exchange ideas and information with someone else. All of it is American culture, all of it is American history. The next day, I think the lady from the health department mentioned about the helping hands. You were there putting out stuff early in the morning, Commissioner? Yeah, so it was just good to see people out in the community doing things, and I appreciate the NAACP for putting that together and all the organizations that came out. Those things kind of truly show community. Our police department was out there doing their community policing, as well as lifting and moving and just participating, having a good time. And it was just amazing. So I appreciate that. I just want to say that during this whole thing, we've seen a lot of things since the death of Mr. Floyd, and a lot of people have asked about community policing and about what's going on in our community. I tell you, where is he? He ran away again. Chief Tuminelli. I saw him in action probably last Thursday or so at the Civic Center. A young lady in the community, Miss Althea Wiley, wanted to get some people together who had special knowledge and special experiences so that she could talk to them personally, and just got just a small group of people together. And I tell you, I don't know, there were a lot of them there, but I think that Chief Tuminelli was a rock star, but that's okay. He was very good. He responded. The things that he's doing in our police department are the things that we need to do in our community, the things that we need to work on. He's quite aware of them. And I just think that we have some high hopes for trying to move forward in our community. So that's it. I also wanted to say, Mr. Mayor, and to those who are here today, that I have my own personal Facebook page, and I posted something on it. And it's probably been a few weeks now, from the first week of June or so. And it was something that was someone else had written, and it said three things you can do to stop racism. I peeked at it. I thought that it seemed reasonable, and I said maybe this might start some conversation. I just posted it. I didn't put any comment or anything. Well, since that time, it has just brought a groundswell of criticism of myself, as well as of my office as an elected official in the city of Stuart. And there was no intent to cause any harm. Our community is beautiful. Unlike any other in the United States, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, I got to see some of the bad and the ugly. It causes consternation and discomfort. And I'm sure that those who saw the post, because I don't have it on my page anymore, because I did not want to have all these things trolling through and affecting the city of Stuart, I guess, or way of life or whatever, the perception. And so I want to, people were offended. They wrote many things, they said many things, and I apologize if they were offended by what was posted. It drew some ire. It probably opened up a wound. It probably started a hurt. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, it was a lot of expressions from everybody, from marketing people to lawyers to friends of friends. It was just amazing. And maybe it's because of the climate that we're in and things that are happening, that when, you know, that created a great feeling. And it's just amazing. Our city, our nation, we're grappling with a lot of things and a lot of ways to have that conversation to eliminate systemic racism and bigotry and other elements that plague us from forming that more perfect union which our forefathers talked about. So I just want to say this is not about me. I know people have tried to make it about me. I don't know if they wanted to affect me personally as an elected official or as my business or whatever it is. People who truly know me, know how I feel, know how I work. And like I said, if you have been offended, I absolutely apologize to you. And I ask you, please, let's think about the bigger issues that we're looking at, about whether we would want to denounce bigotry, prejudice, and racism. Everybody can't respond to a Facebook page. Everybody can't make a decision or do something right at the time. All of this takes a process. And we all need to look into ourselves. I need to look into myself. The people who responded, whether they responded negatively or positively, everybody, we need to examine ourselves. So it's just gotten into a lot of things happening, and it is really something to sit back. Because I'm not on Facebook, I've not seen all of the comments. I've heard of them, but this is our Martin County. This is our Chamber of Commerce place where we have our good nature. And there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. I stand for working with everyone. Those who are hurt and offended, I trust that we can start a process to talk to each other, to find ways to move forward for social justice, economic justice, for legal issues that need to be dealt with. A few years ago, I started the Community Allies Forum to deal with housing and racism, healthcare and racism, education and racism, the courts and racism. We went through a whole series of things. Maybe we all need to take a chance to listen to each other and to talk to each other, because we are not gonna have a big kumbaya and a love fest anytime soon, but this is our nation, this is our country, and we just need to just be patient with each other, forgive each other, try to understand what's going on and how it affects us in the long run, in the bigger picture. And I know we are here as elected officials, and we make a lot of, we talk, and people come here and talk all the time. And sometimes, maybe this is probably not more for us, but it could be also because we have control over some things, or police or staff, different things that are here that we can look into. But we can just see if it's time to start making promises and start making some policies to ensure that justice is done. I just ask you to be understanding, and I know that no matter how vile the posts were about me, I forgive, and I hope and I pray that you will also understand and accept, and that you'll give some time to let us have some reconciliation and some opportunities to continue to make changes in our community, even when we don't agree, even when things are tough. Let's try to work together, because we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My only comment really for this evening is kind of more of a point of order. In previous meetings, I tend to be a little generous with public comment. And I do that for a reason. We meet here twice a month, and we as commissioners don't get a chance to ever speak to each other unless we're here. So I take a little extra time, and I allow the public to have a little extra time with us. However, given the some of the vitriol that we've seen around certain issues and certain controversies lately, and given the fact that we have a dedicated discussion and deliberation item number 17 for the Community Relations Board, I'm just here to let everybody know for the purposes of our public comment today, I'm going to wield the gavel a little more strictly today. I will insist that if you have any comments pertaining to, even if they touch a little bit on what the Vice Mayor was talking about with regard to Facebook, our state of race relations and community relations in the city of Stuart, I'm going to insist that you reserve those comments for item number 17. I think it's important that that discussion happen all together, all of our voices together. So please, when we open it up to comments from the general public right after approval of the agenda, that will be for any issue that is not agenda, that does not pertain to any of these agenda items. And that's it for me. Mr. Dias?
Would you like a bridge update or pass?
Yes. Yes, please. I had also thought we would
You can do it.
Okay, well, we will be discussing the state of emergency with regard to the bridge. So I'll give an update there when we do add that agenda to the agenda for tonight. So no other comments for you?
No other comment.
I will seek approval of the agenda with, yes, sir. Commissioner?
Mr. Mayor, with the amount of public that I believe is here for item number 17, I'd make a motion that we discuss and move item number 17 directly after the consent calendar. And the motion would also include adding the addendum to the
I'll
agenda.
second that. Thank you. I have that note.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Vice Mayor Clark to approve the agenda with item number 17 being moved to the first order of business before consent.
No,
After.
Right
after
after,
consent,
before commission action.
should be number 14.
Okay, and the addenda being included as the part of the official agenda.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion?
Public comment.
Any public comment on the reordering of our agenda for this evening? Seeing none,
I do
all
have
in
a hand
favor?
up. I do have a hand
Oh,
up.
do we?
But I believe it's going to be public comment in general from Teresa Kudo. She's had it up the entire time, so.
Okay. We'll accept that during our general public comment. Ms. Kindle, will you, I guess, all in favor? Do we need a roll call for the agenda?
It's amending the agenda. It's just all in favor.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we will move on to general comments from the public. Again, this is general public comment, not having to do with any item. I will remind everybody at this time, as people approach to give general comment or may give it on Zoom, we don't know what will happen, so please bear with us. And if you may be offended by a Zoom bombing, please take care. First is Helen McBride. What do they call that? Parental discretion is advised?
Yes.
Civic discretion is advised.
Hello, I'm Helen McBride, Flamingo Avenue, Stuart. Now, I'm here because I listened to this county commissioner meeting Friday morning, and I got to start going back to those meetings. I was very upset. And the commissioner from Jensen Beach made the comment that all of the viruses were from the city of Stuart in Indiantown, and he wouldn't seem to give up on that line. And I thought it was great that Commissioner Harold Jenkins from Hope Sound, he's tried to stop him, but he wasn't. It was the city of Stuart. And as you know, I've been going to these meetings for a long time at the county too, and they just always love to throw criticism at the city of Stuart. That's why I always say I'm from the city of Stuart. But I was so happy tonight because that's the main reason I was going to talk about is ask you to investigate with your health commentator, your health department. It's Jensen Beach, Port Salerno, and Stuart, and Indiantown. But, you know, as you always said, all of us, we're a great little town here. But it's getting ridiculous the way some of these commissioners, all they like to do is throw rocks at us. But, you know, we're above that, like you said. We're the city of Stuart. We can do anything. But thank you for having the health department make that comment. And I was so happy to sit back there and listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McBride.
Thank you.
Any other general public comment?
I have one on Zoom. Ms. Teresa Kudo. Ms. Kudo, if you'd like to give public comment, please unmute your microphone.
Go on.
Ms. Kudo, one more time, if you'd like to give public comment during general comment, please unmute your microphone.
Okay.
Nothing, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dias. Okay, we'll move on to consent. Nobody pulled any items. Do I see a motion for approval of consent calendar?
Move approval of the consent calendar, items number 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Second.
I have a motion by the Vice Mayor Clark and a second by Commissioner Matheson for approval of consent. Any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on consent, items 7 through 13? Yes, sir. Please.
Oh, I do have, I'm sorry.
Oh. Please state your name for the record, sir.
Armin Pasquale, downtown Stuart. I guess she forgot to pass the slip over either on purpose or otherwise. Anyway, number 13. I don't understand why you people are wasting millions of dollars buying a building that the city does not need. The people of the city need a tax reduction. We're having trouble. Businesses are down. Profits are down. We're having difficulty paying bills. And here you go and throw millions of dollars at a project that this city does not need to get involved in. What kind of fiscal responsibility is this? If you don't believe what I'm saying about people that own property, people that own businesses, I suggest you walk around this town. I have. People are in need. Not because they aren't trying, but because people are not going to their businesses, including mine. People don't work, they don't pay rent, they leave. So why you people insist on pursuing this ridiculous problem is beyond me. Do we need more real estate owned by this city? I doubt it. Do we need more spending for foolishness? I don't think so. Start thinking about the people that live here, work here, and spend their money here. We're in tough times again. This reminds me of the tough times of 08, 09. I went through those. It was not pleasant or easy. Now we have it again because of a foreign virus. Nothing that we've done, it has been brought here by others, but we are the victims. It's about time you express leadership and fiscal responsibility in your spending of the money that comes into this city. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pasquale. Is there any other general or public comment on our consent calendar? Any online, sir?
I see none.
Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes, motion carries unanimously.
So Ms. Kudo raised her hand again. I'm not sure if that's still during general, if you want to address it or not.
Well, let's give it a try for this next item. We've already called the vote.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to what was formerly item number 17, the Community Relations Board discussion. Do I turn this over to you, Mr. Mortel?
I'll take it.
We can, but okay.
At the last commission meeting, the commission directed me to look into the idea of bringing back a board of some sort as it would relate to race relations and the workings of not just the city, but basically as either a city type board or an advisory board. After tossing the item around and speaking with some community members, I am recommending that we do it as a citizen-initiated board. And in the agenda item, you'll see that I'm recommending that this citizens board be made up of a city commissioner, a representative of the NAACP, a representative of ACES, a representative of the Concerned Citizens of East Stewart Group, a representative of a Hispanic organization, a representative of the Ministerial Alliance, and 2 at-large citizens positions. I would personally facilitate those meetings and have staff, whatever the topic may be, have staff present to address the topic of the particular meeting. The reason I'm recommending this is primarily because there's already a lot of distrust amongst government, especially from our local community. And so if this were a board that you initiated at the commission level, it would be probably held in this room for recording purposes and the Sunshine Law, and would probably get less participation than what I would hope for. I'm looking for a board that is able to meet and discuss without fear of people getting up and ranting at them. There would be citizen listening sessions with these boards that would be scheduled so that all citizens could come and address this group. I hate to even call it a board more than a community relations committee. It would be the responsibility of the commissioner assigned to this board and myself to advocate for whatever changes come out of the board. It doesn't necessarily mean that whatever people on that board or an individual on that board thinks should happen happens, but everyone is allowed to give input, and in return, staff is allowed to say it's not done this way because of state law, or it's not done. So it's a two-way educational road is what I'm envisioning this to be. It also gives a one-stop shop. When I was a police chief, I always looked for that one-stop shop where I could go and address the community. And it's a small area, a small neighborhood, but there are many different groups within that neighborhood or factions, and you could go and talk to 1 or 2 and you're going to miss 3 or 4. But if we could get a representative from each of these boards who has a broader span so they can go back to their representative organizations and speak to them about the topics at hand, and then come back to the following meeting with input from their boards, it's a multiplier of input that we're receiving from the community, from each of these boards. Each of these organizations were chosen because they have membership. They have people who sit or participate within those organizations or groups. So that is my proposal for this community relations type board. That one-stop shop that I was talking about would also allow the city to get input from the community, specifically the East Stewart community, about the happening. So when you remember when we looked at some rezoning, the large amount of the community came out against that. We could take that kind of thing through this group prior to us even initiating to get some feedback from the community before we step off of those feet.
If I can also just chime in from a legal perspective in looking at the background on it, if you want it to be a city board, it will be subject to sunshine. In addition to that, it probably be limited to city residents. In addition to that, we have an obligation to do background checks on everybody whose names gets put in, and it has, each one of those tiers has a chilling effect on participation. In addition to that, I spoke to a gentleman by the name of John Quick, who is the chairman of the Community Relations Board for Miami-Dade, and they have a very, very well-organized relations program down there. He said to me that the mere fact that this commission had the meeting that it had on the Zoom bomb demonstrated to him that the commission is actually in touch with the community members, and that creating a city board would be adding another layer between the community and the commission, and that he didn't think that we needed that based upon what I was describing to him. I mentioned it just for what it's worth, that I did speak to him about it.
I would also,
Go ahead.
I'd also like to add that I have contacted the president, if you will, of each of those organizations, and they all are very excited about the possibility of this and participating.
Please, Vice Mayor.
Okay. You want to go, Mr. Matheson?
Well,
I heard you.
Well, Commissioner. Yes.
Mr. Mortel, can you just explain, touching on Sunshine, and there was some discussions of what happened with the CRB meeting and the bombing and how, can you explain to everyone that even those board members couldn't reach out to their fellow board members and communicate due to Sunshine Law? And if this board is part of the city, that every representative that would serve on this board, if it's under the umbrella of the city, aren't supposed to communicate on any decisions that they might potentially vote on.
Well, and Sunshine basically is a restriction to the board members, because what happens is, once it's an organized board, then whoever is on that board, if it was a city Sunshine board, could no longer talk about any issues before them unless they were at a public meeting. And if they spoke to each other candidly in the park or at the grocery store or in passing at other events, they would actually be committing a crime. And so the purpose behind this is to kind of open the engagement of communication and not curtail it. So the fear is that restricting it to one meeting a month in city chambers in such a confined communication arena, it might not be doing it justice.
But, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Well, Mr. Mortel, places like the city of Miami that has had a board probably for more than 30 years now. I think they came out of the.
It was actually
civil-
68.
Yeah, they came out of the civil rights movement when they had theirs down in Miami. And even then they had riots and lots of things after that. So, but them, and I think you sent me something on the city of Gainesville, they have something too, but all of those are done by ordinances and resolutions, and they're a little bit, like you said, they're at a little bit different level from what city manager is suggesting at this time. So.
Yeah, Miami it's a much more formal, but it's also representing 3 million people.
Yeah, and they.
Because it's the greater Miami area. It's the Miami-Dade community, and they respond on behalf of the county commission.
Community Relations Board, yeah. And I think that's because there's a lot of cultural differences. There's very diverse Hispanic, Haitian, lots of different people there. They want to make sure there's some representation at all levels. I just want I know that we'll hear input today and we're going to be discussing, but I just want to make sure that when people sit on this board, that they don't feel like when they discuss matters that it's going to fall on deaf ears, or that, we don't want people to say that they're wasting their time on a board. So we want to make sure that really, and it's going to be up to them when the issues come to them. It's not going to be, sometimes I looked at the minutes of a board in Cleveland, Ohio, and the minutes was, we're meeting, there's nothing to discuss this week, but we still remember what happened the last month because there were no issues that came up. There was one little thing they were going to follow upon. So it's not every day that some major issue, but like city manager said, when we have some development or something that might cause some ire in the community, that we have people who are there, who are responsible, who are listening to others, or giving people an opportunity to come out and speak up and speak to them so that they can, there's that medium sounding board environment. So I don't know, I think we can go to the public.
Commissioner Bruner, I heard you, did you have a comment or question?
You speak into your microphone.
This is just for our city, these citizens on this board, and of course with our city police department, correct?
Well, the way that our city manager has presented kind of a first draft of this would be sort of an intergovernmental, quasi-governmental board that features a member from the commission, and then as well as members from local organizations like ACES, NAACP, Concerned Citizens, Ministerial Alliance, Hispanic Organization, a couple other at-large citizens. So it would be a.
But it's in the city.
That'll be-
Folks are
Yes,
not-
all these folks are in the city.
Well, I mean,
The
perhaps.
intention is actually not for you guys to decide,
Okay.
is
Yeah.
to actually let the board decide
Right.
its parameters.
And they would come up with bylaws and with, organizing structure, I suppose.
Can I just say one thing, Mr. Mortel, the last time when we were passing the resolution on diversity, celebrating diversity, you mentioned about, let's say like you yourself participating, just like how the city manager discussed that if city did it and had the meetings here and had minutes, it would have a chilling effect. Commissioner Bruno just brought up about the police department. I think that one of the things would be maybe people would want to complain about the police department or complain about City Hall or whatever it is. So I think that citizens is what it's going to be. And then if there's another thing to deal with police reform or police review or whatever, that's a whole other thing that maybe at some point will come up in our city. But this board or these groups of people will be listening to some things that will give us some input as to how people feel about certain things or what's going on. Is that how you're seeing it, city manager?
Well, as you know, we already have a Stewart Independent Review Board that
Yes,
reviews
yes.
complaints against the police department, which is an independent citizens board.
Yes.
So this board would review some of our policies and procedures in-house, One of the first meetings that I would ask to review would be the police department's use of force policy. Now, whether there's change on that, I don't know. I mean, it depends on, I would ask for a presentation from the police department to the board, and then we would discuss or review their policy and discuss the puts and takes of the policy. I can tell you as being an accredited agency, a lot of their standards that they do are accredited, state accredited requirement standards. So when you talk about change, some of that change has to be done at a higher level than us. But that information can be shared with the board on what can and cannot be shared, or can and can't be adjusted.
Can I just say something, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please, Vice Mayor.
Don't let me say it, Chief Dias. I know I said it. When you were police chief before you became our city manager, I know that we had a difficult time trying to get coordination, especially in the East Stewart community. And you work so well with East Stewart Partnership.
Yeah.
And that was a way for a group and I think it'll be similar to something like that, but it would be just another, different sets of people. And it's a way to get that communication going. So,
yeah, and so one of the issues that happened with that, and that would have been the perfect ideal situation, but one of the things that happened with that is that was one group. So where this is taking a person from all the different groups, and then they can go back to their individual groups and have the discussions.
Thank you.
I guess I'll say I'm generally in favor of the idea. I think I can see how having it be an officially sanctioned city board could have a chilling effect and maybe reduce participation or limit participation. The point about sunshine is a really good one. I think that, people having ideas or stories to share with each other, you might forget about them between board meetings, and to be able to call up your other members and share at any time, I think is good. I guess my question really is, I like where we're starting with sort of the suggested board makeup, and perhaps to your point earlier, Mr. Dias, this is sort of our presentation. This is how we are inviting these local organizations to work with us, and in a way us having a member of the commission and you helping facilitate the meetings, us saying we are open to partner and review ourselves with you. And perhaps that board could then say, we should have another representative of this organization. We may be missing some people. And perhaps it might be useful to have a representative of perhaps like a police union or something, so that we've got every voice in the room together if policing is to be a focus of this board. And I also question whether or not the express focus on the East Stewart community particularly, I want to talk about that a little too. Does it make more sense to, you know, really open this up for our whole community?
Yes.
Or do we really need a targeted approach with East Stewart? You know, I don't know.
Well, I look at this board as a way to break down communication barriers, and I like everything that I've heard. You know, understandably, people have a distrust of government, and we're sitting up here, we're trying to build more community involvement. And I've seen that distrust over the past 2 years, and we want to break that down, and that's why this board with these different groups can help. And this is a good template, where, as you just touched on, Mayor, once the board starts meeting, it can evolve a little bit and deal with different issues. And it's just another way to facilitate communication and ideas to be brought to the commission with city staff input, so we can know that board can know the confines of the commission and laws that we're dealing with. And we can all come to, you know, a positive solution. So, I mean, I think we've got a very good roadmap that the city manager's laid out for us. But I agree with you, Vice Mayor, perhaps we should listen to public comment.
Before we open that up, yes, that's a good idea. Is the intent to offer a meeting space at perhaps, you know, the 10th Street?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
okay.
so it would provide with city support as well. So meeting spaces and whatever else might be needed.
And to confirm, this suggestion also is that any recommendation or findings or suggestions arising out of this board or commission, however it ends up being, the commission member, City of Stuart commission member on that board would be responsible for bringing any recommendations back to this body for discussion, implementation, et cetera.
Yes, but remember, so they would be responsible for advocating for whatever that change, agent or change would be. But remember that, for instance, the police department, and they make a recommendation that they say, you should change this. The chief says, not an issue. And he changes it as a policy. That's not something that's going to come before you, because it's the police department's policy and he's in agreement with it. And that change could happen immediately.
I should also point out that if it's an autonomous board, they might not invite one of you to be on it. I mean, the theory here is that you guys are going to create a board and wait for an invitation. And if they want a city commissioner to sit on the board, or they want a representative of the police department or the fire department or the public works department, or not, that should really be at the discretion of that initial founding board, because they're going to have to create bylaws and they're going to have to determine the path they want to pursue. And they might want to say, we see ourselves in a position that may be adversarial or different than the actual city commission, and we don't want a commissioner on our board that has a conflict every single time because they can't vote. So as soon as you have one, like for example, we have 4 people. If you took one of you out, then you have to get a unanimous vote of the other 3 on any issue that you want the commission to vote on. So there's a lot of balance that we haven't considered yet, that we just kind of have to let it evolve.
Vice Mayor, did you?
Yes, I was going to ask city manager, if I guess you would be the department that would be the connection for this board then,
Yes,
as opposed to Jim Kralski's, he's a more artsy.
it would be my baby.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, you know what, maybe, oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
I had some thoughts too, also, the children always come to my mind first. For them to have mentors, teachers, and even the police officers they look up to. I know in the last couple of years, our city police have been trying to work more and more like that in neighborhoods and walking the streets. You see so many of the kids over on 10th Street after school, and when they get ready for school. And the summer, the summer camps. I was reading about this one Atlanta, Georgia police officer. He had said something about PIT. I don't know if y'all do it or know anything, police interaction training. And and what it said was, which I thought was really cool. They would like to sit down with the kids and their parents, set them down and talk about how to respond, what their obligations are. And then it says in the cop's obligation and all our interaction, more and more of that. I mean, the Easter community is asking for a guidance on what to do. And I know that if you put a membership together and some of them from there, I think they can all work it out. It's very tough. I'm all for anything we can do and our officers helping in any way, and especially mentoring the children, getting their parents out to help mentor them. We do a lot in the city of Stuart, and I think the people forget sometimes. And I want them to look up to our police officers. I want the police officer to be his mentors when he looks up and says, "This is what I want to be when I grow up," and the young girls too. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner. Why don't we move on to some public comment and hear from the community as we kind of narrow this all down. I do have a couple green cards here in hand. If there's anybody here in this room that would like to make public comment, please see Ms. Kindle and drop off a green card. Anybody at the Flagler Center overflow, please prepare a comment if you'd like, and then as well as Zoom. We'll begin first with Amelia Fry.
Hello, my name is Amelia Fry. Do I need to give my address? Do I have to do that? I live at 615 Hibiscus Avenue. I would like to read a statement that was written, a portion of a statement that was written by myself and a small group of friends. We are all locals. We are all white citizens here with a vested interest in anti-racism work here in our community. Vice Mayor Clark recently shared a post on her personal Facebook page with suggestions on how to fight racism, and in turn has become the target of an effort to brand her as a racist. Offended community members have taken issue with 2 items in particular from this post. One, that white people could apologize to people of color for the historical injustices of racism and listen to them about how racism has impacted their lives. And 2, that registered Republicans could leave the GOP over its support of racist policy. The campaign against Vice Mayor has contended that both of these suggestions amount to what is called reverse racism, when people of color show prejudice against white people. And we would like to explore that idea a little bit more. The post suggests that the GOP supports racist policy, such as voter suppression, dismantling of social services, biased sentencing laws, and redlining. While it's possible to make a case that these policies were not embraced out of inherent hatred of people of color, it is significantly more challenging to debate that these policies have not done real harm to communities of color. And that is what racism is. While many people believe that it is simply one person being mean to another person because of the color of their skin, that is a woefully incomplete definition. In recent weeks, Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the gold standard, has committed to revising their definition of racism to go beyond individual prejudice, to include social and institutional power, creating an advantage based on skin color. This is less about what one individual does to another, and more about what systems and institutions like government, education, and the media have wrought over centuries to protect and benefit white people and oppress people of color. Instead of pointing fingers or creating villains, we can all be advocating for empathy, conversation, and reconsideration. Would it really be so bad for white people to sit down with their friends, their family, co-workers, and neighbors of color and listen with an open heart about how racism has impacted their lives? Is it somehow racist to suggest that white people should be open to that conversation? Or that we should demand a higher standard of action from our political parties, Republicans and Democrats alike? How much time do I have? I'm going to pause there. May I continue?
You may continue, yeah.
Okay.
The buzzer will go.
Okay. We are living in a singular moment in history. We haven't had a national conversation about racism at this scale since the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which was over 50 years ago, before many of us were alive. Support for the Black Lives Matter movement is at 67% nationally, according to the Pew Research Center. At this moment, when we finally seem to be able to confront the historic injustices and present realities of racism in America, we cannot stand for the bullying of the City of Stuart's only Black commissioner, who simply used her personal social media platform and First Amendment rights to encourage strategies for anti-racist progress. If individuals take issue with the content of some of the strategies shared by Vice Mayor Clark, that is okay. It would benefit all of us to substitute our gut reaction of defensiveness with a position of action. Let us take time to consider what tools would be most effective in the fight against racism in our city, our county, our state, and our nation. As school board member Tony Anderson stated in a recent special board meeting, our history when it comes to race relationships has been a real problem in this country because no one wanted to have an open, honest conversation because our history was ugly. Let us use this moment to finally start that conversation with open hearts and open minds. And we hope that this board that you are creating will allow our community and our city to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Caitlin Palmieri.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Palmieri. I live at 3076 Bonita Street. I am one of the members of the community that helped compile the letter that Mimi just wrote. I wanted you all to know that Eula did not read the letter, that since we wrote the letter and distributed it, we've had many other people come in support of this committee that the city is interested in putting together. And I think it would be a really powerful way for people to feel empowered to be a part of everything that's happening in their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palmieri. Next, we have Marissa Mensick.
Hello. My name is Marissa Mensick. My address is Southwest College Street in Stuart, Florida. I just wanted to talk to Mr. Dice about his idea, which I think is fantastic. I think it's a wonderful way to engage the community. I wanted to advocate that you bring youth into it. As a teacher and Stuart, middle school teacher, I learned real fast teaching civics that if you listen, they have a lot of really strong opinions. They sit in classrooms and schools that we force them to go to, and they experience this every day. Their thoughts and ideas, they do need mentorship, don't get me wrong, but they also need to be heard. So I request that you listen to the youth and engage the youth in this process.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on this item here in the room? Do we have any at Overflow and Flagler, sir?
Yes, sir. Stand by.
Just say your name.
Hello, my name is Elaine Goendu.
Hello, sir.
Stuart, Florida. I am very excited to hear that you guys are talking about creating a community relations board that is showing that the county is aware of the tensions that are occurring here in our country right now, and it is a responsible response to this, that we are being sensitive to that. I want to make sure that that committee includes representation from also our migrant communities. as well as a member of the school board, you know, a member, a teacher as well, people that can reflect what's going on day to day, and also our schools, because this epidemic of racism and the polite racism and the quiet racism is far stretching, and it's going to be a lot of effort from different areas to come together to have those candid conversations that need to occur in order to start addressing those things. What I would like to know is, when it comes to additional representation on the board for that, is there going to be consideration for a position in that on your board for race relations specifically, or is it going to have to be an in-between, go-between with one of the council members that are already there?
Beg your pardon, Mr. Goendu. We accept public comment. We, as a rule, don't have question and answer during this time, but we can, if you pose several questions, we might answer them in further discussion.
Sure. So question, one, will you include other places, other organizations into that, including school district, mental health counselors, and migrant community? Second question, will you guys consider having an additional member on that team specifically for race relations so that there isn't that buffer between the community and the board, rather a direct access?
Thank you, sir.
I yield my time. Thank you.
Please say your name and your address.
I'm Kate McCormick. I am here with NASW Treasure Coast, which is the National Association of Social Workers.
My name is Candace Rasa. I'm here on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers for Treasure Coast, which includes Stuart.
My name is Nancy Politis, and I live on Sweetwood Way in Stuart, and my office is also in Stuart.
So as representatives of the NASW, we would like to just read a brief statement. The primary mission of social work profession is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic human needs of all people, with particular attention to the needs and empowerment of people who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. As a committee, we are asking that as you're considering this board, that you would consider including representation from either the NASW or a social worker within your community, as well as mental health professional, because we are in the jails, we are in the schools, we are in the hospitals, we are in the community. And I think as a profession, it is important that we look at the entire, not just the individuals, but the community as a whole. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That concludes Flagler Center presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Krolski.
I have one more, if it's Ms. Kudo. Ms. Kudo, if you're online, you can unmute your microphone and speak.
Are you able to unmute for them?
I'm trying, it's not doing anything. Oh, there she goes. Ms. Kudo? Unmuted the microphone.
Ms. Kudo, you are next.
It's obviously having technical difficulties.
Yeah. Maybe we'll move on. Ms. Kudo, if you're able to hear us, please feel free to email your comment, any comment, to the commission. There's a contact form on the website, and you can reach us all or individually.
You can also, if you'd like right now, you could dial in on the telephone number that's listed on the agenda as well. I have one other comment, sir. Mr. Campenny.
Hello, Tom Campenny, 700 Southwest St. Lucie Crescent, Stuart. I just want to say there's been a lot of controversy about Vice Mayor Clark, and I know Vice Mayor Clark really well. And that's unfortunate because she's not in the least that type of person. So I just had to make that perfectly clear that, to my mind, she did nothing. She may have done something that shouldn't have been done, but she did nothing with malice. So I just wanted to make that perfectly clear. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Campenny. Do we have any other hands raised?
No, sir.
Okay, so it seems we have some generally positive support from the community. I did hear a couple ideas about including, or suggesting rather, to Mr. Mortel's point earlier, that this is perhaps an evolving board that we rightly so won't have control over. Perhaps inviting a representative of a group of young people that could participate, perhaps reach out to the school board and maybe Martin County for that matter. Someone from the migrant community, mental health, social workers.
And sports. I would suggest somebody who has sports.
And sports. I guess probably what we will need to do as a matter of business is to, if we are going to move forward with this, is to identify a member of this commission that would serve. Is that what would you be looking for something like that, Mr. Dias?
If you feel one should sit, I mean, you heard Mr. Mortel's comments on that particular aspect.
But at least we can together vote on who among us would do that if they were to allow.
If we're to, may I say something?
Yes.
Mr. Mortel, I'm thinking more like an independent. I know that this is more sophisticated organization, but let's say like the Rivers Coalition. They come here, they meet. They're an official nonprofit group and everything, and they have lots of rules, their own rules. But they come here, they meet, they do things. I think that they may have somebody from the commission on there, but
the initial bylaws for the Rivers Coalition said no elected officials.
right. So I'm thinking along those lines, kind of. You know, they're there, they meet, they do their own business, and I think that this would be something like that.
And by the way, that I mean, obviously the purpose for your guys' meeting tonight is to decide what, if any, involvement the city commission wants to have with a board like this. I mean, you guys could conclude at the end of this meeting that you want the city manager to provide office space or space at 10th Street on the second Tuesday of every month for this board to meet, and that's it. And just let it evolve from there. Or you can direct the city manager to contact the people on that list and try to initiate the first meeting and kind of get the ball rolling. It's really, that's kind of the purpose of the D&D. From the standpoint of the Rivers Coalition, their first probably 30 meetings didn't happen at City Hall. It was once they had grown so large they were unable to meet in people's offices that they started needing a larger place to meet, and they approached City Hall for the purposes of it at that point. So this is a little bit different because the Rivers Coalition is a much broader subject and wider reaching. But you know, again, it's your guys' discretion.
And I've been to some River Coalition meeting, and that's not what I'm looking for.
No, I'm just thinking of the.
Well, the similarity is what Vice Mayor was getting at is I've been to many Rivers Coalition. We don't have voting power. We're not a member. None of us as elected officials are a member of the Rivers Coalition.
Well, as a matter of fact, I don't remember in the last 5 years the Rivers Coalition coming to the city and asking for anything.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, we have representatives of the community here that are leaders in the community, and they're all doing, you know, important work in and of themselves. I think for us to just say, well, they're out there, they'll get together and they'll do what they're going to do. I mean, if that's the pleasure of this board, you know, so be it. But I think
we need a liaison.
I think we need a liaison. I think we need somebody from staff. I think you would be a perfect person to at least initiate this, because part of this process, I hope, is that there really is a deep discussion and analysis of city policy and the departments and our priorities. And it will be critical that a staff member, a representative of the city, is there to answer questions, to provide some insight. Otherwise, it's.
Well, and if I can point out a point of clarification, throughout this entire thing, whatever it is that we're talking about, what engaged the city in this was because the city was the victim of Zoom bombing. I, for as long as I've been involved in the city, have never heard somebody say that the operation of the city was ever anything close to being discriminatory or that there was some kind of problem with it. I'm not under the impression that they're talking about the city's business practice. And if that is the case of this board, then I need to recommend to you all right now not to do that. You have an HR department, and we shouldn't be hiring or creating a board that's going to review the city's business practices. It's simply, we need to, there's a lot of issues that I probably don't want to discuss in public on it, but I don't know that that's the intent here at all.
That's not what I heard as the intent. I mean, my impression was that this board was going to help break down communication barriers and help work to unite the community.
Right, as a community, is not the city.
Mr. Mortel, the Commissioner Bruner has a.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to say, when you mentioned here, I think our manager, you was a police officer, the chief, and now you're here 30-something, 40 years. I think he could put it together. And plus he said he would, he could bring those 7 people or whatever it was and bring that back before us and we can approve it. But didn't you say, Mr. Dias, that you would be there wherever these meetings are? Yes.
Yeah, I'd be there every meeting.
I really, personally, I trust David to.
Sure.
I mean, he knows the theologians and all the people. He knows so many. I trust that you will pick I didn't see young on there either, but I'm like the mayor. I'd like to see a couple young people, 30-year-old. One.
Much younger than that. So I do agree with having a youth representative on the board, but a lot of people got up and spoke, we want to be on the board, or we should put migrants on the board or whatever. But I think we need to remember that we need to stay Stuart-centric.
Right.
So this is about Stuart, not the greater Martin County. I can't do anything on the school board. I can't do anything in the school systems. We can't do anything at Martin County level.
It might evolve that way, but I think to start, you're right.
Yeah.
And just as a point of clarification for everyone's purposes and for you, Mr. Mortel, I didn't mean to say that one thing that I intend to come out of this is that we would have a recommendation on our hiring practices or diversity or affirmative action in that way. I mean, but you know, for the record, we do have citizens of our city come here quite often and allege discrimination in our business, meaning our expenditures of CRA, our priorities.
Yes.
So, you know, I mean, that happens. So I don't think that, I think that is could be a proper focus of this board if the leadership of the board intends it to be. And I think our role, I mean, Mr. Dias can help facilitate, answer questions, and receive that information. Hopefully we can get a report on it. And if there are any discussions that make, you know, that do ask for different priorities and how we expend funds or do our policies, then I want to hear that. This is about opening ourselves up to the community's input, criticism or otherwise. So that's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, I believe we have to build trust with all the citizens, the people, and the children. I mean, I always go back to the children, that we have this relationship with our officers.
Well, go ahead.
And I was trying to write down notes that I wanted to remember, but I know we all have we want the same shared sentiments and show unity between each of us. And I do have one. It's not a concern. It's just there for us to grow and grow forward and to help each other. I think of what it's hard to express it, but I get upset because I know the police officers, and I know they've worked hard. And when one of those gangs come in to our town here in Stuart, and then there's a murder, we don't, the cops never find out. Nobody says anything. And it hurts that you want to build a relationship, and I do too. And then nobody says anything when a horrible crime happens right here in our little bitty town. It breaks your heart. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. So it sounds like we're all, we've directed the city manager to pursue the creation of this board, or at least help organize with the various identified members. Should we?
Are you in need of a motion?
You should probably authorize him to expend up to X dollars and to use city facilities, so he doesn't have to come back to get a resolution authorizing that later. Because if you let the 10th Street be okay with it, we don't have to come back for it.
Not to put you on the spot there, Mr. Dias, but do you have a ballpark for the origination of something like this? Flyers?
No, I mean, I would just make the motion to have to expend the city manager's time and city resources to furtherance the community relations board.
And
So move.
last time when we discussed this, I left it that potentially Commissioner Clark would be the point person and working with Mr. Dias. Is that something, even if you're not a voting member, that, or should this be just
While we're here,
Who wants to do it?
coming back?
I mean, you've made the motion, Vice Mayor, but it sounds like the commissioner is asking you to amend your motion. Would you consider, if this board would like to have a representative of the city commission, would you be that person? Would you like to have that in your motion?
Well, just keeping in mind that they may not, but.
Well, no matter what, someone's going to need to show up at the first meeting.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
probably
yeah.
benefits one of you to be there for
Right.
that.
So then the mayor can do it.
I got enough on my
the
plate.
motion was.
I would
She's the motion
volunteer.
maker, so she can make whatever she wants.
I will volunteer.
Couldn't we all go to the first meeting? I think
No, because now it's a sunshine. We have to have it. That becomes a city commission meeting.
we would just not speak.
When does that ever happen?
Oh, I mean,
This is where
Bruno wants to be the
by the way,
go-between.
if you do that,
Okay.
I love the children. I would just love to be a part.
So we have a motion to direct City Manager Dias to reach out and begin organizing the Community Relations Board and to use his time and expend city resources to do so. And that we identify Commissioner Bruner as the point person to begin, should they choose to have us involved. That's the motion.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We've discussed this. Any further discussion? Do we have any public comment on this particular motion?
I'm all for it, except for one very important thing. Keep 10th Street Rec Center out of it. Because, till this virus is over with. Because the senior citizens, they had their, from 9 to 12:30, they play games, they eat their lunch there and that. Then, since March, they haven't been in this building because we seniors want to protect our children. So, I mean, I have no objections once the virus is over. But as long as the virus is there, we have to protect our children. I don't even go in there to go to the bathroom if I'm over there because I will not enter those doors. We have to protect our children.
Is the elderly, are they still coming?
Huh?
They're not coming, are the elderly?
No, we don't go in the building.
Right,
They have a
right.
drive-by with a parent, they can pick up their meals. But when you're saying, the rec center, you can't do, I'm sorry, you can do anything you want. But I know you all, I know how much you all love the children as much as I do. That's just my suggestion. Thank you.
There are always
Thank you,
community
Ms.
churches.
McBride.
If people need to meet in a space where they can social distance, there are always churches or whatever. I know that St. Mary's Church, if they're open, when they get open, they have a big space. They can always do some things there. There are lots of places, but we can always do Zoom, at least to start off. People can go email and do Zoom.
I don't see location as an issue.
No.
Yeah, thank you.
And as we're still under a state of emergency, local state of emergency with city manager presiding over its emergency powers, I thank they'll continue to uphold our social distancing and keep everybody safe. But
Yes.
Ms. McBride, thank you for that important reminder. Yes, we have another comment outside.
This is the same item.
I just, Caitlin Palmieri from Bonita Street again. As somebody who is.
I beg your pardon. Just
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's the same item.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. As a rule, we only allow one comment per item.
Oh, sorry.
Beg your pardon.
This is a call to motion.
It's a different motion.
This, yeah, I was
This is a
gonna say,
comment on the
there's
motion.
technically a
Okay.
motion.
Motion?
You took
Yeah.
comments in
Okay.
front, so you have to take it in the back.
No, come on, Ms. Palmieri, I'm sorry.
Not like that.
You're testing me here. Everyone's testing me
Just
here.
want to see if you're all.
Yeah, right. I gotta pull up my Robert's Rules of Order.
Just wanted to say, as a dues paying member of the Martin County chapter of NAACP and somebody who works in East Stewart, I would really love if Vice Mayor Clark was involved in the initial startup of this group. I know she's a busy woman, I know, but I also know that the folks that I've been talking to about some of these issues in the city really trust her, and I think it would be, you know, a really wonderful gift to the city if Vice Mayor Clark was able to attend that first meeting. And thank you also, Commissioner Bruner, for your volunteerism.
Thank you, Ms. Palmieri.
Maybe we'll float.
I do have Ms. Kudo back again, so we'll give it a shot. Ms. Kudo,
Maybe
please.
third time's the charm. Ms. Kudo, if you would unmute yourself, please.
She's got to be going crazy.
I know.
It's a great name.
She's on the phone.
Kudo, if you could unmute your microphone, please.
They're tough.
Ms. Kudo, are you, please give us your comment if you can. Oh, muted again.
She might not even have a computer for microphone.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other Zoom comment?
No,
Raise
sir.
hands.
No, sir.
Okay, seeing none. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Dias, are you looking for any other direction or motions out of this item?
No, sir.
Thank you. Let us move on to our regularly scheduled programming. Commission action, item number 14, on-street parking spaces on Albany Avenue. We didn't do that in the original agenda. I guess I'll need a motion to continue this.
Motion to continue item to July 13th.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Vice Mayor Clark to continue item number 14 to date certain July 13th, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 15, license agreement between the city and the county regarding the maintenance of 18th Street.
This is resolution number 71-2020, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the mayor to enter into and execute a license agreement between the City of Stuart and Martin County to install fencing and maintain the cul-de-sac road known as the 18th Street that intersects Southeast Palm Beach Road on the east side of the former subdivision known as Lawler Gardens that is now vacant land, writing effective date for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel.
Briefly, I've been speaking to the county attorney on this matter. They simply want to prevent people from going on that area because of the FAA regulations. And in order to maintain it and keep it secure, they've asked if they could fence it in. The city manager negotiated with them and has agreed to a chain link fence around 3 of the sides and then a decorative landscaped black wrought iron fence for the front that would go along the Palm Beach Road to be a little more architecturally attractive than that. And it's the sole purpose for it is to allow it to be accessed for the maintenance purposes to keep the lawn mowed, et cetera, but to also maintain that there are no human beings and or people in the flight path of the planes, which was the cause for the removal of the houses in the first place.
May I please, sorry, I'm not in court. Move to approve? No, I have, I want to just say this. I am Eula Clark, Vice Mayor of the City of Stuart. I live at 1008 Southeast 16th Court. My next door neighbor is Southeast 18th Court and all the empty property where those houses on 18th Court were. So technically, the county's airspace goes over my house, and I'm probably the only person on the city commission who probably technically kind of lives in the county. I'm right there. So I see the aerial, and I see, I don't see the fence line unless I was looking at something else. Staff, which staff has this up that can pull up the other designs? There's a fence design and there's an aerial.
Vice Mayor, if I may, Commissioner Bruner had a motion on the floor and you are asking questions. Would you second the motion for discussion so that we can continue?
Okay, yeah, I'll second the motion for discussion.
Thank you.
So I see the fence design, but I don't see, what I'm interested in is that myself and my neighbors on 18th Street originally, even from the time when Dennis Armstrong lived there, people have gotten, and I think Mr. Leggett knows about this because many years ago they used to come through on 17th Street and clean up. They're not doing that anymore, but we've cleaned up. But most people have gotten a revocable permit to have 15 feet into that area. And we already have our fences on through the middle of 17th Street. And I just want to know exactly where the county, I've seen I saw the presentation, but I couldn't tell if they're just going to keep it the way that they are now.
I can verify for following this meeting that it's actually at the back of the property lines purchased by the county. So if you look at the aerial, you were referring to properties that already encroach in the city's right-of-way between 17th and 18th. I was under the impression, and I could be wrong, so I will verify this, that it was just the northern lot lines of those properties on 18th Street. So as he's zooming in, you'll see in a second. And if you want to conditionalize your motion on that, and then if in fact it turns out to be wrong, we can come back to you and revisit that, because I agree with you. We don't want to approve something and then cause the
like the county will take us and say that we're encroaching or whatever, because we all had revocable permits, like $75 or whatever, and they put their fences in. The fences have been there. Some of the fences are not even, but we just want to be sure.
I'm not sharing.
And we can, if the county can talk to each of us.
Where the cul-de-sac is, right now, so down.
right there, there you go. See the empty? Zoom in right there. So all the way, you gotta get above it to see it. But those houses that are on the top of the empty area, their backyards are not a perfect line.
No, we're not a perfect line, and we want
I don't know what he's doing now.
we'll take care of it if we get probably all of 17th Street, even if we have to do another revocable permit, it's there. Armstrong was there, Sainsbury was there, and people have different fence lines back there. So I want to be sure that when the county comes in, it doesn't come in and, you know, chop down our trees or something that, for a silly reason.
So if I take the,
yeah, you see how far back that house on the end is? And the YMCA just did a whole area around there.
so as you can see, these properties here, these lines right here, this fence area, and right down here in particular, you see how this jets back and forth. So these folks have built into the city's right of way. These people have not. So my understanding is that their fence was actually going to go right like this, kind of along the actual property lines, and not include the city's right of way at all, because the city right of way I believe is 10 feet wide or even 20 feet wide through here. This map doesn't show it, but it would really start, it would be out here further. And
That's correct, that's my understanding as well.
I would.
you can see on this side, there's a fence already in place.
Mhm.
And then on this side, the fence is in place. And see where the fence turns here?
Yeah.
That fence would go all the way down kind of along this way and would leave the city right of way to the north of it
So
out.
the 17th Street, all right of way would be.
Not included.
Okay, good.
By the way, I'm not 100% sure, but like I said, I'd be happy to verify that or have a contingent
We
upon
didn't
that.
get, I mean, you know, I know that this was on. I didn't really talk to my neighbors about it, but I know that it was on, but, yeah, if 17th Street could be left to the city, then that's fine. If 17th Street is not included. And they're doing
The right of
everything
way.
on the edge of 17th Street South.
Mr. Mortel, would you suggest that we amend the motion just to be safe, that this is conditional on that clarification?
Yes.
Would the Commissioner Bruner amend her motion to conditionalize it?
Yes, I will. I think, Mary, I hope you have listened to that better than I did. We're amending it for 17th Street.
Yes, which is a city area.
The city area,
Yeah,
city.
this is not because of any gain to me or anything. It's just that the city property needs to not be split by the county or something like that. I just want to be sure.
Okay.
So that they won't be coming through and taking 17th Street, but they'll be on the edge of 17th Street going south.
Does the Vice Mayor amend her motion, her second?
Yes, so agree with Ms.
Commissioner Matheson?
Well, while we're still discussing, I just have got to express my slight frustration with this large piece of property here, and that all the bright minds in the city, county, and then FAA cannot come up with something that would benefit this property more than what is resolved. Is just what we're going to be doing, and what is happening is we're going to fence it off and leave it as basically grassland to mow. And I understand the reasoning why, and I've reached out to several county commissioners by it, but I am disappointed that this couldn't in some way be, trees planted, that in 20 years we'd have a nice pine upland forest there, that it couldn't be water retention area and help add groundwater. And I understand the legalities of why this is happening, but I'm incredibly disappointed that all we've come up with is a strip of grassland.
Yes, people wanted to have fruit trees there, or to have a dog park, a dog walk park or something there.
A solar array.
So many options.
Okay, let's move on then if we can.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment? Yes. Mr. McDonald?
Sorry, I'm gonna. Just on the property there, I agree with Commissioner Matheson. In fact, I'm going to say back in 2011 and 12, I spent a year and a half as a member of the Airport Noise Advisory Committee for the city of Stuart, working with county staff, airport staff, trying to come up with a use. And at the time, they actually were trying to, the same as they did, how they actually purchased the properties was they did it for the purpose of the runway encroachment zone. Excuse me, I forget the acronym right now, but they use noise money. Mm-hmm. And at the time in 2011, the county was trying to get us to do a zoning overlay so they could buy more neighborhoods and tear down the houses and leave a big hole. In fact, Euless Street was one of the streets that they were looking at. And at the we looked at everything, and we actually, me, Paul Nicoletti, former city attorney Mike Durham, went and met for several hours with the FAA in Orlando, FSDO, trying to come up with a plan for that property. And unfortunately, there is nothing that we can do. We looked at community gardens, we looked at solar arrays, we looked at stormwater. Nothing. In fact, I'm surprised they're even allowing the county to put a fence around it, to be honest. So I agree with you. It's frustrating. And when you get into the history behind how it happened, it's even more frustrating. So it should never have been done in the first place. So I'll fill out my little green card as soon as I find a pen.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this motion? Any online, sir?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Now we'll move on to one of our addendum items, declaration of state of local emergency. Mr. Mortel? This is resolution number 81-2020, a resolution of the Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, declaring a state of local emergency pertaining to a hazardous condition related to the Roosevelt Bridge, providing an effective date and for other purposes. Yes, that is the commission action item number 1 on the addendum to the regular city commission meeting, which is now the final commission action item. Mr. Dice, do you want to just give a brief review of the emergency?
Yeah, so the reason we originally instituted this local state of emergency for the Roosevelt Bridge property is because allowing for expedient time as it relates to measures that the FDOT is doing to try to get sections reopened. So if they are going to encroach into our right-of-way or tear up our sidewalk, obviously coming before commission would be timely to have that occurred for any type of authorization permission. So this state of emergency would give the city manager basically the authority to grant those items in place. And I can tell you that is one of the plans that they're looking at for the lower side of the bridge would be some of our drainage and sidewalk tear up.
Yeah, so from my end, Mr. Dice and I are both on a daily update call with FDOT District 4 Secretary Jerry, I forget his last name. It's been very helpful, and basically they just give us the update as to how they're progressing with their testing on both north and southbound bridges. And unfortunately, it's been slow going, as you all know and have heard both reported by the city outlets on Facebook, as well as from the FDOT Twitter. The basic process right now is that the FDOT is continuing to examine the northbound bridge. And when I say bridge, I mean both the north and southbound bridges carrying US 1 are two separate bridges technically. We often refer to them as northbound and southbound lanes of one bridge, but they are both structurally separate, which is why we are able to still have our emergency vehicles go over the northbound bridge while the southbound bridge has evidence of critical failure in some of the steel cables, which we would not allow any traffic to drive over that at this point. The FDOT is still investigating the northbound bridge, but at this point they said they still have not found any significant evidence of the kind of corrosion and structural failure that they have found in the southbound bridge. And they estimate that by the end of the day Wednesday, they will give us a timetable for a potential reopening of the northbound bridge. They are already right now removing the striping, so to anticipate restriping for that resuming of traffic. They are going to be bringing in 4 lanes. They're going to be restriping to 4 lanes, although they did say that, and that's kind of to accommodate the best case scenario. They said it is very likely that if they reopen, they'll start with a 2-lane traffic pattern. As far as Dixie Highway is concerned, the support struts, which are these massive pieces of equipment centered on large steel discs, are being placed under the first span of the South Bridge. And those are to hold up the structure so that they can get back in there to investigate the extent of the corrosion and the structural failure of the first span of the South Bridge. And we do know pretty confidently that the South Bridge, just based on that initial investigation they did, is going to be, in Jerry's words, weeks, if not months, and it sounds like months, before that bridge is repaired to the level that it can bear traffic again. Dixie Highway, once those support struts are finalized, which should be hopefully by end of day Wednesday, the traffic, to Mr. Dias's point, could possibly resume. However, they're pretty confident that they're going to need to come in and take out sidewalk and enlarge the road so that traffic can navigate around those structural elements propping up the bridge. So with that being said, we're still waiting for more information. There's significant testing going on so that we can get to the bottom of why this bridge is failing early. I have called for a thorough report of what they have found. Obviously, we're not going to get that anytime soon. The focus right now is safety, first and foremost, making sure that nobody is harmed, and then second of all, getting the traffic resumed in a safe way to the best of our ability.
It's District Secretary O'Reilly.
That's right. O'Reilly. Good old O'Reilly.
May I say something, Mayor?
Yes.
I live right off of East Ocean Boulevard, and ever since we haven't been able to go over the bridge, I had no idea how busy East Ocean Boulevard could be. Just so many cars, because you never see it busy. If we built 1,000 homes from here to the beach, it would never affect it like what I've seen coming out of Port St. Lucie. I mean, those 17,000, they're coming up and down East Ocean Boulevard instead of.
It's actually 21,000.
That's how many.
We've taken for granted certainly how important that new bridge is to carry traffic.
That's what I thought, Mayor, because I thought
68,000 cars that go over that bridge a day during the summer.
I thought, my God, people, you have no idea until then.
Vice Mayor?
How lucky we are.
No, 68,000 a day.
Vice Mayor, did you have
Thank you. Yeah, so to that end, I'll just bring this up because I always bring up controversial stuff, whatever. So I had someone send an email. Everybody probably got the same email. The email about creating a ferry to bring the cars across. I don't know how long-term this will be, but and how practical that would be to have land on this side to have cars and ingress, egress. Probably down at Flagler Center would be a point, but you know, it's one of those things. So yeah, but someone had brought it up and I thought that I would at least mention it and let them know that.
I can tell you that there is a river taxi that has made arrangements starting, I believe, tomorrow or Wednesday, that's worked a deal out with the Tide House. It's that yellow water taxi you see out there. They've made arrangements for people to park in the parking lot across the street from Tide House, and they are going to be charging people $5 each way to drive them from Tide House to the City Hall dock, where they'll be dropping them off, and then of course picking them back up at the City Hall dock, driving them back to Tide House. Completely unrelated to the city of Stuart. It's an entrepreneur that's doing it on their own. Good luck to them. I hope it works. I know that it's going to provide some relief, especially for folks that live like in North River Shores or directly over the bridge, that it's really significant for. But I believe they're starting tomorrow or the next day, and I forget the name of the taxi. It's not the Tiki taxi.
No, it's not.
It's a different one. It's the yellow one. It's not the gentleman Gene.
Are they allowing bicycles to be brought on?
I don't have any details at all. I just know that they probably would. I know that's that yellow, pretty big. It's like it looks exactly like those water taxis in Fort Lauderdale. It's a big yellow boat that you see out there.
Well, so I signed a declaration of a state of emergency within my powers, but I guess this item really is for
I'll
to
make a motion to approve resolution 81-2020.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Vice Mayor Clark to approve resolution 81-2020. Is there any public comment on this resolution, on this motion? Any online, sir?
See none.
Seeing none. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's move on to item number 14. Oh, sorry.
16.
No, this is the second agenda item regarding the Martin County Emergency Order 20-11.
Do you want to do that?
Or do you want to wait till the end to do that?
That's D&D. Let's move on to, ordinance first reading, item number 16, the evaluation and appraisal report.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, sir.
Ordinance number 2442-2020, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, adopting the evaluation and appraisal report year for the comprehensive plan of the City of Stuart, stating the intent of the City Commission to amend the comprehensive plan based upon recommendations contained in the report, and approving transmittal of the evaluation and appraisal report to the Department of Economic Opportunity and any other interested governmental entity, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Stephen Mayer for the Record Development Department. The evaluation and appraisal report, which is termed the EAR, is a process for updating the local comprehensive plan, and it reflects changes in local conditions and state policy concerning planning and growth management. The purpose of this EAR is to assess and evaluate the success and failures of the local comprehensive plan. The report is also required to address changes in local conditions, state and regional planning policies and growth management, state statute, and through the adoption of related amendments, it is meant to update the local comprehensive plan to address the issues raised in this EAR report. So the evaluation and appraisal report, I showed you this timeline once before, and we started this back in June of last year. And it starts with a staff review that identified changes to the state statute, chapter 163. And those are required changes that we needed to make to keep up to date with those state statutes. It also identified some city amendments from the last year that we needed to adopt. And we also prepared a community participation outline, which is the second step in our process. We had a kickoff community meeting last year, I believe it was October. We had focus groups with Stuart Main Street, and we conducted community surveys online and in paper print. We had main participation meetings. We had a total of 3 of them at various locations. We had 2 here at City Hall, and we had 1 at the 10th Street location. After which, we developed 3 public workshops with you and the LPA. And that was a few months ago, right before the COVID hit us hard. But we were able to get those public participation in, and we heard your comments, and we've been, in that meantime, during the COVID height, we collaborated with our consultant and have reevaluated our proposed changes and finalized our draft EAR document. So right now, we are at the last stage, which are final public hearings. We conducted an LPA public hearing earlier this month on the 4th, and we incorporated their changes. I'm gonna go through some of their major recommendations. And right now, we are at this point where we are holding a transmittal hearing or first reading of this ordinance, which is our EAR. After which we would transmit whatever you approve to the state Department of Economic Opportunity. And then we would wait until they give us comments, and then we would come back to you with those comments in the second reading, and that would be the adoption phase. We're hoping to get that adoption phase either late July or maybe even early August, depending on how long it takes to incorporate their potential recommendations. So just to briefly go over some of the public outreach efforts, we feel that they're very important in the development of this EAR report and in collaboration with our consultant. We established the City of Stuart webpage landing page to centralize the ongoing EAR information. We created a participation flyer explaining the process and encouraging participation in that kickoff meeting last year. We advertised the kickoff meeting in info bits on all city utility bills. We created a survey and distributed those to focused interest groups like Stuart Main Street. We did have outreach to those focus groups, and we did hold a focus group discussion with Stuart Main Street. We held two other public participation meetings. One here, we had two at City Hall, and one we have one at City Hall and one other at the 10th Street. That's in addition to the kickoff meeting, which would be the third. And then we had an outreach by email blast, and we had a Facebook page for further public participation. So before you tonight, and in this ordinance, attached to this ordinance, is the final EAR report. The objective of the EAR is to update the comprehensive plan consistent with state changes to state statutes. The EAR process identified a few policies that required rework and provided those recommendations in the EAR report. Staff has renumbered the comprehensive plan goals, objective, and policies in order to help refer to them more effectively. Previously, you would have two policies that were numbered 1A or A1, and we've decided to take the element number as the first number of each goal, objective, and policy to refer them to the element. Staff has provided recommended policy language changes that are supported in the EAR. And the LPA reviewed the EAR on June 4th and made comments in recommendation and approval. Staff has incorporated those comments with, and I can get to those, let me get to this slide. So the major LPA comments that were incorporated by staff is the addition of electric vehicles under the resilience and sustainability recommendations, revising 6.0 under the EAR to encourage electric vehicle charging facilities under parking and vehicular infrastructure, to copy the sod reduction in the neighborhood vibrancy recommendation to also be in the conservation recommendations, and to remove the new from the sod recommendation, meaning that we might want to do sod not just in new development, but also in existing areas. To add in more of the green bike lane programs into the EAR, to add bus stops under multimodal recommendations, and in 847 to change invest to encourage. And we can go over that if you wish specifically. And then also to add golf course cart policies suggestions under the multimodal. Now, two other comments that were made by the LPA, major comments, was the updating of two tables, one of them being in the transportation element and the other one being in the public schools facilities element. And in both of those cases, staff notes that we will have a full evaluation of level of service policies in the transportation element, and at that time we will update that table. Updating the table now just to reflect the changes won't really would not really go with the policies that are behind it, and we really need to take a closer look at it. Also, the public school facilities element is recommended to be removed, and some of the policies moved to other elements. And so staff will update those policies during the reorganization of the element at a later date. So first, I would like it to focus on just the required changes that are due to the state statutes. They are entitled as Exhibit 1, well, a table called Proposed Comprehensive Text Amendments per Statutory Requirements. And if you would, provide staff with any of your comments in regards to the statutory changes, if any comments that you have, we can receive them first and get those kind of almost out of the way first, if that's possible to do right now, before we carry on.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I mean, I don't see any, I think that some of the statutes are the old references to the name of old statutes.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't have any objection to all of that stuff being changed and updated.
I agree. I
Yeah.
have no issues with the required changes.
The major tenets there are in the coastal management element with respect to sustainability and also resiliency, and then the reflection of new naming conventions such as 9J.
Agencies and names
yeah.
of rules and regulations, yes.
Okay. Seeing no comments on that exhibit, we can move forward with ear-based recommendations that were follow-ups. Now we have the following slides that are changes that are recommended by staff, and Kev Freeman would like to go over those with you in detail.
Is that for the land use element?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This is to do with future land use element, which is number 1. And we looked at policy 1A72. And if you recall, sometime in the recent past, we looked at the attainable housing issue in Stuart, and we looked at the urban PUD, urban planned unit development, and adopted into the land development code the allowance to use to apply a smaller density per unit if it's a certain size. So this is really language to update this policy to reflect what's already been done in the land development code. So in order to promote the efficient use of land and to provide an attainable housing stock, and then it refers to policy 3826 and housing opportunities just as a cross-reference, the City Land Development Code shall provide adjustment through the urban planned unit development process. So that's restricting it only to the urban planned unit development. No other PUD can incorporate this allowance, to accommodate smaller residential units and allow smaller housing units to be calculated at no less than 0.5 density per unit. And if you recall, that limitation is 900 square feet in the urban planned unit development, and those units can be counted as 0.5 density. We also amended the car parking calculation in respect of those units also. And I want to remind you that this only applies to the urban areas of the CRA. So this policy is very restrictive. It was put in place for the urban planned unit development only. It does not apply to residential planned unit development or commercial planned unit development or even the mixed use planned unit development.
Now, Mr. Freeman, if going forward we amend our land development code, say to 1,200 square feet, that would have no bearing on our comp plan.
If you wanted to add the actual square footage,
that's what I'm getting
in
at.
this, it's something that it's may be appropriate in this sort of a policy to maintain what the actual philosophy of this policy is trying to achieve. And staff would have no objection to you wanting to put that in. Usually when we're looking at a comp plan, we try and leave the mechanics to the land development code. But I can understand the reasoning and the why we moved towards this was precisely to encourage that size of the unit. Yeah.
I agree with this. I can support this language, but my hesitancy is that in the future, the limitation on the square foot gets changed much easier in our LDC than in the comp plan. And the intention is thrown off a little bit.
And staff would have no objection to incorporating that language to reflect what the intent of this part of the code is.
Well, I agree with the intent of Commissioner Matheson's question, but I disagree. I believe that the comp plan, to your point earlier, should be broad in its sort of goals and policies, and that the LDRs and code is where we actually activate them and they change over time. My issue here really is that I understand that this is a mechanism for us to allow for denser development within the UPUD, within the CRA, but to me, density is density. I'd almost rather say this to me could appear sneaky to some people, that this is a way for us to basically double our density cap in the UPUD. I don't think that's what we're doing, just to be clear, but one could say that, well, suddenly you're going to split units in half. Is there another way without having to do this? Do we have an option where we could, what would the process be to go through and actually revise our density limits?
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could just chime in, the commission has already adopted the code that authorizes this to occur.
Right.
So this is making sure that the code you've already adopted doesn't violate the comp plan. So
Right.
we're kind of backing into it just because the timing of it was such that when you guys adopted it, the ear review was already in place.
Okay.
And as a result, I understand your concern that you don't want it to look like that. And I get where you're coming from, because I agree. I wanted the public to be comfortable with the idea. However, whatever solution we come up with, we definitely need to include in this submittal, because we haven't actually had a project use this ordinance that we've already passed yet.
Okay.
But I would be concerned that if one came through and someone had a challenge that it wasn't in the comp plan, we'd have some issues.
Thank you for the clarification. So our code by ordinance that we've already approved could not survive a legal challenge unless we were to have this actually outlined in the comp plan, is what you're saying.
Right. And maybe it would, but it would be a difficult task, because right now the code says, and like you said, you know what density is. Density is density. So our code right now says up to 30 units an acre. Well, if we were to have a project of 1 acre with 40 900 square foot units in it, that would calculate out at 20 units an acre. But somebody that's, using the philosophy that you just said, density is density, would say, no, that's 40 units an acre, not 20 units an acre. So you'd have to go back to this to say, but the math to determine density is accepted here.
Mr. Freeman, the in code right now, you said, so 900 square foot, that's the benchmark at which the half unit can
Yes.
be considered?
Yes.
Anything like at or below 900 is the idea?
900 to 1100. I think that's where we set it. Anything above 1100 moves to the next level.
And anything below 900 is not allowed by code, or?
Well, I think it's anything below 900
would be
counts at 0.5.
Okay.
So you could have a unit at 600 and it would count as 0.5.
Right now, an 800 square foot unit, not in the CRA,
It's
is
one.
equal to 1 unit per acre.
In the CRA, it could be with
If it was claimed.
In
Now,
a UPUD only.
Yeah, in association with this, I want to just give an insight into where staff are working with the PUD process. As we move through the last 2 years, we've developed, attempted to develop a mechanism for trying to measure the benefits that are produced by PUDs.
Mm-hmm.
Staff are working on a more formal approach, a tabular approach, where these improvements are calculated, where PUDs have to supply a number of benefits to be allowed to claim PUD status, if you like, where Commission have the option of allocating points, and these will be produced in a table for providing such things as attainable housing, or additional stormwater treatment, or better architecture. All those things will be graded, and so when PUDs come through, the benefit that this piece provides should and will be judged on the other benefits that development provides.
I hear what you're saying, Mayor, but I'd feel more, we're already getting down somewhat to describing the way you'd achieve this density unit, but the thing we're leaving out is the square footage. And that's a big opening, and to me, the comp plan should be the overarching principle, and in this case, it's not. Without that square footage, the land development code, it's almost reverse in my mind.
And the problem we ran into is that doing the reverse, what the mayor was originally saying, like, instead of saying half, but doubling it and saying you can go to 60 units per acre, would create a lot of technicality, because it's not intended to be 60 units per acre at any square footage, and then you start getting all caught up in that. So it is a complicated measurement, because it is only 900 square feet or less. So the actual space played a significant role.
And that's where
it's 1199 and less.
Right.
you wouldn't have the entire table that we had in the comp plan, but some reference to square foot. I mean, sorry, the entire table that we were presented with in the land development code.
You could add language to say that, providing that such units were less than
Yes.
900 square feet.
Is your concern, Commissioner, that this could be a kind of a backdoor to have larger units be credited at half?
Yes, that's my concern, really, is that I feel that somewhere in this, the additional language to address the square footage slightly would ease my concern.
And the process by which we would, let's say, later on in time, instead of going down the code route and actually putting a number in our comp plan, we have a decennial EAR. What is the process for us if we were to say in 8 years, something came through and we decided that maybe it needed to be, a slightly different number? How would modifying the comp plan is a significant undertaking?
It's a comp plan amendment. Yeah, it's another step in the process. I wouldn't say it's it's not an horrendous thing to go through, but it is another piece of the process.
Once a year you can change it.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of having to put a specific number in there, just because I think this should be allow for a natural evolution over time based on on the individual code. But I see your point, Commissioner, wanting to protect a runaway commission. But I suppose they could also change the comp plan too. I mean, I feel like structurally the point of the comp plan is to be overarching policy goals, and the nitty gritty is activated by code. But I see where you're coming from. I think leaving this as is. I would prefer to leave this as is, but I don't know. What do the rest of you feel?
Do you need a motion?
Well, there's quite a few more. Yeah, I think I guess staff's looking.
Maybe if you could.
I'm fine.
Well, I'm interested in some reference to the square footage, as you stated, and we could, but we can move forward.
Okay.
Does anyone else?
No, I'm looking at the table. I mean, Kevin, what's your professional opinion?
It's right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a perception that this would be, maybe discussed in more detail. But the preferred way of doing it, and the number of times I've experienced that the comp plan has hindered where the land development code should be controlling in previous lives. And the way that planning and policy should be structured is, it really is trying to keep this organized as the comp plan, the overarching policy document, and then the land development code as the actually engine of delivering the planning decisions.
So hypothetically, if a project came before us, we adopt the comp plan this way, and we have the land development code as it stands, and someone comes with a UPUD before the commission, and they're going for the 0.5 density units, but their cottages are 1,100 square feet. We as a commission can approve that.
1,105 square feet, yeah.
You can deviate from the code in a PUD.
Yes.
Yes.
But if it was in the comp plan that it had to be 900 square feet, we could not. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Do you see my point, Mayor?
I see your point. I do. I really do. But again, I think
the question is, would you deviate?
Yeah,
But it's included and not limited to? Is that makes it?
Providing
differently?
such units were less than 900 square feet.
Yeah,
And then if the commission wanted to deviate in the future,
Takes
they
out his
could
0.75.
change the comp plan once a year, but we've already made a significant change. And we're adding the language to change it, except we're not going all the way. So someone could come before us in a UPUD, request a density of 0.5, but they don't have to be held, if the commission so chooses, to the 900 square feet unless we put it in the comp plan right now, and then it's just a more significant hurdle.
If
Still could
you were
be
inclined to, if you were inclined to put it in the comp plan right now, I would ask that it be, take at no less than out and put 0.5 for 900 or less and 0.75 for 1100 or less. And by the way, I know those can overlap, but the developer can play whatever game they want with that because you don't have to care. And that way we don't have to worry about these deviation negotiations being, okay, well, I'll give you 0.65 or 0.7 as your calculation, because we don't want to get into that either. We want density to be exactly what it is and anybody to be able to open up the book and do the math and know what the math is.
Which we already have in code right now.
We have that in code right now, but in a PUD, the commission has the right to deviate from code. So that the fear is that if the commission's going to deviate, then you got to start measuring. You can't be at no less than either. I don't think you would deviate.
You know, I think that there's a relative protection. It's not a protection, but it's smaller residential units and smaller housing units. I think one could argue against in court if they wanted to take something to court where it was 1,200, that it was as half. In our code, that is not small, and so one could, you could do it any which way. I want our comp plan to be tight, but
Should we include that language that Mr. Mortel just included?
I'm not saying.
Suggested.
I'm not saying it needs anything. I'm just saying if you're going to go down that path, you end up having to add more and more and more. I'm just pointing that you can't just make one word change. It ends up growing.
We don't need to go down there.
In the point of moving forward, I'll have faith in our future commissions. But I will say that we have deviated from our land development code numerous times.
Every meeting. That's the point of the PUD.
That's the point of the PUD. Right. So we just adopted this in our land development. It was something we chose to adopt. Right. But we're not willing to go all the way and cement that same language in our comp plan. Put a fine point, and yet we discussed it in the land development code, but we've deviated from that code numerous times. I support what we did. It's just I feel like we should finalize it in the comp plan.
Well, if that's your motion to include specific numbers, did you just second that?
I think he made a motion, yes.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion. And so is the motion to go with what Mr. Mortel said, which is everything sub 900 is 0.5, everything sub 1100 is 0.75, or 1159, 1199?
We'll defer to the city's attorney's exact language.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Commissioner Bruner. Any public comment on this edit? Seeing none. It can be an all in favor, or Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
No. Motion carries 3-1.
Still going to be.
Mayor dissenting. Okay. No, we got more.
Yes, you've got a few more. We did add the UPUD as a planned unit development option. Now that needs to be added into the residential density limitation table, which complies then with all the other land uses. We've also looked to remedy, I think, a scrivener's error somewhere in the table which limited the East Stuart PUD density to 17 units per acre. All the other land uses of similar types are 30 units per acre. And so we made the recommendation to the local planning agency, and they accepted that be revised to the 30 units per acre to be in line with and consistent with the remainder of the land use densities in that table.
Now, what's the corresponding part of the land development code that would go with the that East Stewart, you said 30 units per acre?
30 unit per, that would come into play if anybody was to come forward with a planned unit development in East Stewart, just as they would come into play with a planned unit development anywhere else in the city.
But it is not affecting the general code.
The
That
general
still
code,
changes, stays
no,
at
the general
17.
code would not be affected. There is a.
It has to be a PUD.
It has to be a PUD. Yes.
Could anyone give me any history on why that's 17 units an acre in our comp plan?
The city commission, in one of the workshops that it had with East Stewart in granting extra benefits to East Stewart, what it said was as initiation to try and jumpstart development in East Stewart, instead of it being straight zoning of up to 15 units per acre, the commission voted to allow straight zoning to be up to 17 units per acre, and at the same time removed any minimum lot size. So you don't have to have a 100 square foot lot. You can build up to 17 units per acre on a 25-foot lot. It didn't matter. That was to incentivize the redevelopment in East Stewart and try and get houses being built, because houses were being torn down left and right and nothing was replacing them. What it looks like happened is when that 17 units went in, at roughly the same time, the comp plan moved to a chart program, and the up to 30 units in the PUD didn't make the chart. The chart says up to 17 units in a PUD, but that means there's no reason for a PUD, because you already have 17 as a matter of right. There's no reason to even do a PUD because it doesn't give you an inch more. So the PUD has to have some incentive, and the 17 was originally to make it easier to do like a duplex or additional stuff on the smaller lots in East Stewart. So it was a square footage math back then.
Okay. So we're still maintaining the core straight East Stewart zoning, which is important. And then we're also, there's like an unfair limitation in East Stewart that if you were to currently by code pursue a PUD, you're still stuck at 17, you don't get anything. So that is an example of a development hindrance. So we're all on board with that one?
Yeah,
Everybody
change
with
is
that?
good. Okay.
Mr. Freeman?
So the LPA had a lot of discussion on the housing element, and we went through that in some detail, and the outcome of that was to look at the use of the word affordable throughout the housing element, and the recommendation was to replace that affordable with attainable. And so it made more sense when we come down to the major policy that had a number of criteria, a number of income levels that were revised, and we've incorporated findings from the workshop, if you recall, going back to the commission workshop on housing, and the income levels that were discussed at that point. So the moderate income category was deleted, and we're maintaining 3 city-defined sort of categories. Very low income, that's anything below 50%. Low income, 50 to 80% or less than 80%. And workforce, 80% and no greater than 100%. And we're using for that as a consistency the HUD AMI for Martin County within the Port St. Lucie MSA. And all those factors came out of the commission workshop on housing.
Mr. Freeman, I think it was probably just an oversight, but when I read through the draft, it's copied here, I think you missed. So right now you're defining in definitions, you're defining attainable, and you're defining workforce income level. We've got very low, low, and workforce. We've stricken moderate.
Yes.
I think you need to add, unless it's your design, attainable does not include workforce. So right now workforce we just defined, but we don't have it anywhere. Is attainable still really only to include low and very low? And then workforce income, there's not even a definition for workforce housing. It's just, is it the intent to have attainable housing include workforce?
Yes, it is the intent.
So let's just fix that.
Yes.
Attainable housing means healthy and safe housing that people with low to with
Yes, I
workforce
see what you mean there,
too
yes.
low to very low, or
Yes.
however,
So all three of the sub-definitions
need to be included.
included in attainable housing.
And, oh, is this it for the housing element?
I think yes, I think it is.
Before we continue, I did want to question one thing in the future land use element. I noticed that we did strike compatible, and I would just like to cover that briefly. I know that was the subject of some,
Spring tree.
yeah. I talked to some of my planning professional friends and wanted to clear it with them. And for me, can you explain a little bit about why that
Well,
decision?
it's the confusion that causes.
Right.
And it really is quite a subjective interpretation, and that in a way doesn't help a discussion. We found that, with the development application that came forward, and just a, reiteration what that definition means doesn't really help solve anything. I think it starts to polarize a discussion. Any suggestions on an alternative to use there would be welcome. And it's very difficult in where we are as a city in terms of its development now. With, we are transitioning between the city, urban, the nature of the urban area, and then the lower density of the county. So, in some cases you could say, things aren't compatible or comparable or whatever. But in other cases, what do you use to draw that line? And we have to use other pieces of reasoning. We use the fact that there was a large area of separation between the two. We use the fact that there was buffers provided, but it's the complex analysis of that. Did it? I don't think it really convinced anybody.
Yes, Commissioner.
Are there, thank you, Mayor. Are you allowed to have trailer parks in our county or in the city of Stuart or off US 1? Where is a trailer park? Can you build one?
Trailer park.
Trailer parks are in the state statutes, and it's a bit of a discontinued code because the state has concerns as to whether the new trailer parks can meet Dade County wind loads. But as a developer, you could technically come in and have modular homes and do it through a PUD. There was people that were talking about doing it in Bruner Park a couple of years ago, and they were not calling it a trailer park, they were calling them tiny homes. But in reality, tiny homes are homes on trailers.
They were on wheels.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing.
Well, I just wanted to bring up that I assumed that was the intent behind striking compatible. And I know that it is very unclear and can cause some debate. An alternative would have been maybe if we could try to define it, but I think maybe you're right that it doesn't really do us any good per se, because we do have other policies here where we do talk about intensity of uses and transition zones and buffers. So I think that's fine. I just wanted to draw it out because it has been a subject lately.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. We went to the housing element. Are we gonna do the transportation element? Or did we pass over it?
If any questions you have, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's just go. Conservation was next.
Yeah, we looked at conservation and looked at the way we measure the buffers and the width of those buffers and the requirements for those. And we've seen PUDs come in which move back and forward with the 50 feet. We wanted to put that in as that was a maintain an average width of 50 feet. So that gives some flexibility, and that again is controlled to some extent by the Land Development Code, which allows that differential to occur. And we've seen developments come through and been approved in the PUD process that they would comply with this, whereas this has caused some difficulty in the past in interpretation.
Commissioner Matheson. Any?
Well, I have a little bit of a tough one with this. Again, this goes back to what a future commission might decide. I mean, this would give us the option of a buffer of 48 feet, in exchange for 2 feet, down the property line. But it could also give the commission an option for
10 feet and
5-foot buffer.
Right.
And
the remainder of that buffer would need to have an average width, so you could.
I understand.
And that's what we've, in PUDs, that's what we try to accommodate.
But again, in my mind, the comp plan should draw the final hard line, and the land development code should be the flexible thing with commission action. And right here, this isn't drawing the hard line. This language is changing.
Well,
When the hard line would be a 50-foot buffer. And those are kind of my thoughts on it, whereas the land development code is the flexible adjustment. And our comp plan is something that we only change, with a few more checks and balances. And those are my thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about that one as well, Commissioner. And I wonder if there's a way where, because I understand, in some cases the case of 48 feet, right, and 52 feet. Is there a way for us to bake some protections in, spell that out much more clearly in the code or in the PUD stipulation that, there's a limit to how we could, I know they could then vary from code again, but if there's a way to limit that so there's a clear signal.
That's the problem. The clear signal was it maintain a 50-foot buffer. If we flirted with a 40-foot buffer with an average of 50 feet, we got to decide if we want to draw the line. This is just as making it a little more flexible.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think maybe this is not, wetlands are not the place where we need to try to extract every last square foot of space out of the city.
I'd make a motion that this stays the way it has been. To revert back to the stricken language.
Buffer shall be a minimum width. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Vice Mayor Clark to maintain the original language on this section.
Now, can I ask a question of what is the benefit that you found in approving developments or dealing with developers in changing the language, that buffer language?
Well, I think that if you look through some of the recent planned unit developments that have come through.
Can't hear you, Mr. Freeman.
So,
I can't hear you, Mr. Freeman.
okay.
Well, if I can chime in first before he even talks about the different projects, I believe our LDR
Yes.
already says it. So if I'm a developer and I come to the city of Stuart, I read the land development code and it tells me what I can or cannot do. And our land development code says you can take the average. So then I take the average of a project and I get all the way to the commission level because staff has followed the LDR. And then it doesn't say that you can't take the average. It says a minimum width. And so then the question becomes, does that mean a minimum of 50 feet all the way around, or is that the average is the intent of that commission was in that LDR? And so I think that what Kevin was trying to do is make the comp plan match the LDR.
We have a resident who's made that clear, I know to me, and I'm sure to the other commissioners as well. But there's another way, Vice Mayor, as you have seconded the motion, we could also alter our LDR.
We can make them consistent in two ways. One is firm up the language in the comp plan.
It's already firm.
Well, no,
LDR would be
a prior commission passed the LDR for a reason. And I wasn't there. I don't know which one did it. I'm just saying that average was made for a reason. And now what's happened is people have said, well, wait a second, is this consistent? So you've got a development director that's trying to make it consistent. You're right. You could make it more restrictive and be consistent as well. There's no doubt.
Does there are projects currently that's been approved that have the average.
Anything already approved that wasn't challenged or whatever is water under the bridge.
Right.
Yeah, we're approving to change the comp plan
But-
right now, right? But that's not gonna affect what you historically has
But that's
happened.
the one that's not, right?
Okay, so
But,
in
but there's
the,
projects in that are relying on this code too.
okay, so in the interest of trying to
Yeah,
match
so,
the
yeah, if I can just,
current comp plan language with what's in the
so
LDR.
with
I'm
what you
gonna
just,
Withdraw my second.
right, so
Matheson, if you don't
we have an application, I don't think the commission have seen it yet, which does have an average width of buffer well beyond the 50 feet, but has a pinch point at 48 feet.
It's just been in front of the LPA last week.
I don't want to change mine either then. I mean, I'll change. I don't want to get even more confused if that's the way it's been. I like the way the staff presented it to me. Maintain an average.
See, that's the tough part, Commissioner. I hear you right there. When I heard that, it's like if it's generally well above 50, and there's one spot where it's 48, you know.
Well, that's where you have to have faith in your future commissioner.
Right, and the way we have it set up now, where it might be a little unclear, it does allow for us to have control.
I'll
Mayor?
agree to the proposed changes.
Mayor, may I say something?
Yes. Commissioner.
I was also thinking that our little city of Stuart is just a small area. We don't have a whole lot of land. And if there's just that one time, you just can't make that 2 feet compared to all of Martin County. I can see it, but we're tiny, and there might be a time where I was sympathetic over 2 feet. So if we were Martin County, might not. Oh, the county, thank you.
Okay, well, you're rescinded your motion?
Yes.
Is there anything else in conservation that anyone would like to bring up? Do you have any more in conservation, Mr. Freeman?
Yes. We've added to look at placing mitigation within the city of Stuart, be more precise in where mitigation can be in option 2. So we're looking at mitigation within the same watershed basin in the city of Stuart. So if we are able to do it in the city, then that's going to be pushed into the city.
Very good. Any difference of opinion?
Is that gonna comply with the district and their land banks and
No.
mitigation banks?
That's still an option. It's just prioritizing city of Stuart.
The question is, do we have an inventory that can meet it?
I mean, I like the language and the push. So, yeah.
I'm okay.
Okay. Anything else in conservation, sir?
By the way, it's just a priority.
I have an edit for conservation. Goal statement 5A. Can we just strike geothermal as a potential energy source? I think that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that shows that we're not we're not very serious about what our.
For what it's worth, I recall when they put that in, there was Don Camaro was on the board, and he was very much into the heating water for your house and air conditioning systems where you run it was a system where they ran a well like 100 feet down or something like that, and it wasn't a heat as much as it was a cooling effect, and you could draw this colder water for purposes of air conditioning or something.
Wouldn't that be a great new technology if they?
But that was where he was pushing it.
I did live in Hawaii for 6 years and it would have been an option.
Yeah, right, or in Iceland. Okay. Conservation, so is that it for your staff's presentation?
Yes.
I had, well, Vice Mayor, yes.
I had transportation.
Will you?
So if we could go on page 5 of 28, policy number 2A19.
Bear with me, sir.
Page 5 of 28. Policy number 2A19 that has items A through J. So I wanted to look at these future transportation map series. And I think, I'm not sure what the names are, but I definitely know that the the Regional Transportation Plan for the MPO currently, I think it's 2045. I'm not sure what the year for the needs assessment is, if it's the same 2045 also. So I wasn't sure if we were including the right things in here. And then the bicycle plan, even though there might have been one in 2017, I think that there's an updated bicycle plan. But I'm not sure where you got the most recent information from. I just wanted to be sure that we had the most recent updated plans that we were
I checked
referring
the,
to.
okay.
Mary, do you remember?
We have,
2045 at least. That's what our plan is.
the MPO just adopted
We
the
just adopted.
2045 LRTP,
Mhm.
and it came with some complete streets suggestions.
Yeah, there's not a complete street map thing in here either, yeah. Well, actually, it's in the plan,
If they
so.
did just adopt that, that might have been because when I looked at this updated, they didn't adopt it yet. I
Okay.
checked the Martin County site for the documents that they had.
It was adopted at our last
Last
meeting.
week. we had a
So,
meeting.
This was, it wouldn't have been on there. Yeah.
So will
Okay.
the Vice Mayor and or maybe Commissioner Matheson being on the MPO work with staff to ensure that those are up to date?
Yeah, I can get them from
yeah,
Beth to
would
make
you
sure.
need I mean, we'd
No.
just be updating the MPO's
Dates.
complete streets presentation.
Mhm.
It's all along the same lines that I think we're all in agreement that we're approving. It's just the most up-to-date information.
Is that it for transportation, Vice Mayor?
Not really. This has nothing to do with the comp plan. I know that we're running out of time. This has nothing to do with the comp plan
Well,
policies per se, but in terms of long-range planning, I just want to just bring this up, that I did, and I think everybody else received it also from Max Stuckey, that talked about a future road through the county, the city, from Johnson Avenue. Of course, this is a comp plan, which is our overall policies, but I at least wanted to bring that up, just so that later on, when we get a chance to look at a detailed future planning, even for options, we had to wait for the DOT to give some options for where to divert traffic because of the bridge. But when we're looking at some things within the city for our future planning, that at least we look at some of those suggestions from Mr. Stuckey, and again, the suggestions that people brought in about using our waterways.
Let's do that, Vice Mayor, but that's not appropriate for
Right,
this
yeah, I
discussion.
know. I just want to bring it up so that it's there for staff to remember.
Okay, is there anything else on transportation?
No,
Seeing
just-
none,
just those
I'd like
things.
to move on. There's just another thing on recreation. I
Okay.
noticed that we have struck a few things. We left Flagler Park. I think the idea was, it said, develop a plan for all of our recreation facilities, including Flagler Park, and then I think some outdated facility names.
Yeah.
We struck all of those out, but it said, continue to work on, monitor and address our recreation needs. It still maintains specifically Flagler Park, and then it strikes everything else out and says recreation centers. Shouldn't we just openly say our parks and recreation centers so that we don't limit ourselves to Flagler Park and not Guy David, Memorial Park or
Where are you? Item 6?
policy 6.A1.15.
Okay, the
If
city
we can
shall
just
monitor.
generalize that.
The recreational needs at all parks. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then,
That's good, Reed. I didn't-
is it, anybody else have a recreation? Okay, and then intergovernmental. We left all of the reference to affordable housing in intergovernmental element. So could you please clean that up? It needs to read attainable, and then our new definitions.
I'm sorry, in
In the intergovernmental element, it still says affordable everywhere. And it still says moderate. It does not include our new definitions for workforce. Specifically, objective 7.A6 mentions moderate income housing. So let's just do another read through on intergovernment and make sure that our definitions are in there. And that's all that I caught.
That was a good read on that. I missed that. These highlighted ones.
Anything else? Any other things that were noticed by the commission?
I'd like to bring up the infrastructure element.
Yes, sir.
A 6.3 regarding the drainage and 10-year rain events or 25-year rain events, depending on the size of the site. And each site would have to hold or retain half of those 25 if it's larger than an acre site of a 3-day rain event. Or less than an acre, it would be a 10-year rain event. And with all the flooding we've had here, again, I'm open. I don't know if this is something that we want to go stricter on our comp plan or not, but this is an area where I'd like to push for more water retention. The way the Earth's changing, what used to be a 10-year rain event might be a 5-year rain event. And
I think that's a great point, Commissioner. And I will say I'm totally on board with you. Maybe we can have this table. I have no idea how to give an actual scientific engineering based, climate modeling based recommendation to change this, but I think it's worth reviewing it against those new data.
that's kind of what I don't know if I'm comfortable recommending a stricter say that the sites have to hold 75% instead of half of the, retain half of the water. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but that this is something that should be contemplated.
Can I make a recommendation? Maybe, is it possible that staff could actually strike this whole table and perhaps reference it in code that we can edit a little bit easier? I don't know if that's possible.
Well, this would be your minimal allowances, and our code would be more, more restrictive. There is an LDR that I've been talking with staff about that addresses the stormwater. Tim Volker, the city engineer, is going to be giving us a presentation in July on our rain event.
Okay.
And as it relates to that, I have asked development to start looking at some things for our PUD negotiated events, such as pervious concrete and storage tanks and stuff, as some of those gives to the city in those PUD negotiations.
What you can do in the code is your code could define what a 25-year rain event is. So
really,
retention of half
that's
of the
a
runoff
standard
of a 25.
definition.
Well, right now, what Commissioner Matheson is saying is he thinks that a 10-year rain event is really now a 5-year rain event.
Right.
So I think that when we get that data, you get that data accurately and you say, look, we've learned that in 1990, a 10-year rain event equated to this much rain.
Right.
In the year 2020, a 10-year rain event equates to this much rain.
Right. But I'd rather, yes, let's.
I'm saying it needs to be addressed. I'm interested to hear what Mr. Volkel will say.
Yeah.
What staff could do in the is earmark that, pardon the pun, to review later. I mean, we could put in the that we would review that policy with some data, and so we
Does
don't have to do
Mr.
it.
Volker give us a report every year of what our storm standards are?
No, not every year. He's gonna be doing one, we had scheduled him to be doing one on the flood mapping stuff anyways, and so I've asked him to do something on that past previous rain events and basically some education on.
I think it's every 5 years we have to update the flood plan.
Which we just did.
Right.
And gentlemen, finally, I forgot to mention it earlier, virtually all the maps that I saw that are included in here seem to be old. They don't include new annexations, or actually not even new.
Old annexations.
Old annexations. So let's make sure that those are.
City limits, yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to move on. We have a discussion and deliberation item, Martin County's emergency order 20-11.
Did we do the approval of the ordinance as a whole?
We adopted it.
Oh, you're right. We do need that, don't we?
Send off the EAR. I move
Ready to read the ordinance file?
approval that all the items that we've discussed.
Am I incorrect in that, Mike?
We do need, I mean, this is first reading of this,
First
right?
reading,
So we
sorry.
need to have an adoption of something to come back on second reading.
We have multiple motions that are kind of
You could approve
with the changes
based
that we have.
upon directions.
So is that your
Right.
motion, Vice
Yes,
Mayor?
ma'am. Yes, sir.
Second. I have a motion by Vice Mayor Clark and a second by Commissioner Matheson. Any public comment on this motion? Seeing none on the online, sir?
No, sir.
Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Okay, finally, our discussion and deliberation on, thank you, Ms. Kendall, for catching that. For Martin County's emergency order 20-11 that was issued on Friday, face coverings. Mr. Dias, will you just give us some background on the emergency order?
So the emergency order that the county has issued through their EOC person, Michelle, is both incorporated and unincorporated Martin counties. And it basically states that pretty much all businesses, although they list restaurants and stuff separately, but it's all businesses, are to wear face coverings. The employees are in areas where they cannot social distance. I know Mr. Mortell's had some conversation with some local restaurateurs over, well, that doesn't apply to me, but yes, it does. If you can't social distance within the restaurant, then it's a requirement to wear the face coverings within the businesses.
With a penalty or a warning from the police or code enforcement?
There is a penalty, which is a violation of the
emergency
order. The last sentence actually has it.
Yeah.
The criminal violation.
Yeah, the emergency order shall be enforced pursuant to section 252.47 Florida statutes. Violations of this emergency order is punishable pursuant to 252.50 Florida statutes as a second-degree misdemeanor.
And
that's by state statute.
And do you think that businesses will think that cuts, I know that it's all for protection, that cuts across the grain when the governor is saying phase 2 and we're all trying to get back, but again, we know that we have more virus going around and we need this, but there's no
this is in place. This is
yeah, so just the reason this is on the agenda,
just to make sure
colleagues, I wanted to discuss it with you all. This already encompasses in unincorporated and incorporated, which is why I did not work with Mr. Dias to do a mirror order, which we do sometimes. This one specifically said in the order that an incorporated Martin County also was included. Yeah. However, I would also like to be able to open up a discussion if we would like to revisit our resolution in support of strongly encouraging face masks. I have heard from a number of employees of businesses I suppose business owners and managers too, that they think it's unfair and they are scared that they continue to have to go to work. They are wearing face coverings protecting the customers, and yet the customers are not required to protect the workers. And I think it's to see what happened on Friday at the commission meeting with virtually every health officer, every health professional in Martin County came and pleaded with the commission to essentially enact universal masking, I thought this was a good compromise. I'm glad they did it, but I think it's time for us to potentially take it one step further and address those serious health concerns and fears among those workers out there. I think it is unacceptable that we have all these signs out in our front yards and banners, and we say, we love our essential workers and God bless you all, you essential workers, and yet we won't be brave enough to protect them. It's just wrong to me. So I would really like for us to discuss taking it one step further and incorporating an ordinance that takes the language of the county's order requiring masking at businesses and locations open to the public where social distancing cannot be practiced, and also including it to just the general members of the public in those same situations. I think we can make important carve-outs. Children are not required to wear them under a certain age per the CDC guidelines. People with medical conditions that make it unhealthy or dangerous for them to wear a mask. But I think it's time for us to just get with science on this and stand by those workers that also need protection.
Mr. Mayor, I agree 100% with science. The problem that I've seen is we also need to listen to our officers up here. And in this time right now, they're dealing with a lot. And I guess my question right now to staff is do we know of any instances or any tickets since whatever time the county adopted this ordinance and it took effect immediately? Has anyone been ticketed? Because we can make this decision up here, but it's our guys in uniforms that are going to be out there interacting, and we're going to be expecting them to enforce it. And unfortunately, I say this with a heavy heart, unfortunately, our general public is here in Martin County seems to be fighting this tooth and nail. Half of them, half the population doesn't. They don't want to listen to science. They don't want to respect other people and put a mask on. And I have personally seen it when I'm working my other job. As a business, we have a sign out that encourages it. We have a box of masks. And so to go that step further is also to basically, then you're going down the line of harming the business's choice as well. And, you know, it's tough, but if we make an ordinance or a law that cannot be logically enforced, are we just putting our officers in a worse spot? And that's what comes to my mind. And right now, we have a national movement, and we have a police force here in town that we are all incredibly proud of. And I don't want to put them in bad situations that they don't want to have to deal with. I've been doing a lot to try and gauge public sentiment on this. I 100% believe in the science behind it. But
Commissioner, do you really think it's 50% of the people out there? Because I see a lot of people wearing masks, and I think the bark is a lot. It's a much smaller dog barking than you think. The bite is not as big as I think.
So to me, this is all about enforceability. And so I think you yourself sent me an email of some other state, what the citizens were revolting or whatever about wearing masks. And if part of the issue with law enforcement and citizen is conflict, and conflict is created because you tell a citizen they can't do something, and citizens don't like being told they can't do something. And so if I go out and I have an interaction with a citizen who says, I'm not wearing a mask, well, now they just committed a crime. Now an enforcement action has to be taken. So if they want to fight, the fight is on. And so every time we create a law where we're creating additional law enforcement citizen contact that puts us in contrary interaction with citizens, you take a risk. It's one of the reasons that I'm in favor of legalization of marijuana, because so many people are using it, the risk is not worth it.
I understand what everyone's saying. I agree, but it's, well, okay.
I see it, and I've put myself as a, at some of my other job, when I see customers come through and I'm wearing a mask, and some of them are and some of them are not. And they are walking in, turning down a mask that's given to them. And I look at myself and say, do I want to be the one to confront them and say that? Or do I want my officers to? And I don't know. I'm thankful for what the county did. I would like to encourage businesses to express their right to serve someone if they're not wearing a mask. And we should enforce that. I think certainly we should take it a step further in that, in my mind, City Hall is not listed in the ordinance. And anyone coming to City Hall, we should put our foot down. And if you want to come before us here or at the Flagler Center where our employees are, Mr. Taralski is, that they should be wearing a mask. And if you don't like that, you can call on the phone or speak at Zoom. But I'm just hesitant on this one. We're torn between siding with the scientists and what we probably all know up here is right. And then again, hedging towards doing stuff that our officers can enforce.
I mean, if you don't tie it to a crime, it's a different story. But once you tie it to a crime, it makes it.
Has there been any tickets issued by the county that you know of at this point?
I didn't ask the sheriff's office before the meeting started, so I don't know. And remember, the counties highly encourages the members of the public to wear a mask. It's not a requirement. So the only requirement is that the employees wear the mask, as the mayor was pointing out. So it's a little bit different than the discussion we're having.
May I say?
Yes, Commissioner.
I too see more and more people wearing masks. I don't think any of us want to ever go back to lockdown. We don't want that. I don't think the police, well, if they have to, I think they might give people tickets, but I think they're going to avoid that as much as they can. We've got other things they should be working on. I would like to, I wouldn't vote on that tonight, but I would like to come back because it has spiked. I don't know if we've had any more deaths this week. I think maybe one. I would like to come back in 2 weeks and see.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But I want to just make it strong and stern that that people need to wear masks.
So let me ask you something. Thank you, Ms. Commissioner Brewer. Mr. Mayor, the county passed this, I think, last Friday. It's throughout the entire county. We're not doing a corresponding ordinance, are we? Or we just, you're asking about making ours a little bit tighter than what we had before. Maybe
Right.
put some special things in for people coming to City Hall, like Commissioner Matheson said, and maybe asking if it's a little bit deeper than this county thing, what business people need to do. And I don't know, like Ms. Commissioner Matheson said, I wish we had this from I know we don't have this, so I can't wish for it. I just wish we had this from national level down so that everybody was on the same page and everybody was trying to, take this pandemic seriously and try to do everything that we can. And like Commissioner Bruner said, nobody wants to go back to lockdown, but it's these kind of measures that we need in order to keep everybody safe.
And we need to say that. I don't know if there's any way we can get it out there publicly that no one wants to go back to lockdown. But if this doesn't, people wear their masks like they should, then you would have to go back to lockdown if it gets really bad and there's a lot more deaths and stuff. But I want to wait a couple more weeks because I know sometimes we panic and we get a little concerned. But I understand you, Mike. If it was up to us, a handful, we could do it. But there's some people out there that are so daggone defiant. Sometimes it's silly, but anyway.
I appreciate your willingness to consider it again later. I think we're going to see more data coming in, and certainly are not going to have another lockdown. We're just going to see, more people dying and very sick. So perhaps we could just keep an eye on our hospitalization rate, which is what I'm trying to do. And, if we start to see the bed availability really start to shrink, maybe we'll have another discussion. I just hope we can head it off.
We could schedule another discussion for our next meeting.
July 13th is the next meeting.
And could we potentially hear from our police chief on his opinion if we were to go down that route that the county did, but make it for all patrons of business? That's what the mayor is. I mean,
Can I ask a question, Mr. Matheson? So is the police chief understanding that based on what the county is doing in Martin County, that you'd be following these rules also and enforcing them in the city?
Yes, we are.
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir. Checking if you.
So as City Manager Dias explained, when we move something such as face masks into a crime, the potential for something more to happen is very possible. You have the people that are going to be non-compliant. Just imagine arresting somebody for not wearing a mask because it is an arrestable offense, and then that person resists with you. And it moves on from there. Look at it from that perspective as well. I mean, I am a law enforcement officer. Are masks my priority? At this point, the point is no, but if we have to take action or get complaints and such, something that I would have to think about is the risk worth the reward just for the situation I gave you? Your low-level misdemeanor could turn into a high-level felony from its beginning just because of a mask, not wearing a mask.
Well, we went through, with all due respect, everybody, we went through the same thing with smoking indoors, with wearing seatbelts, and this is a critical crisis moment right now. And to be honest, if there's anybody that is in a position that is trained and paid and in a position to deal with those kind of escalating law enforcement situations, it's a law enforcement officer. Unfortunately, at this point, businesses that are choosing to only serve people who are wearing masks coming in the door are making their employees enforce it. And that's where you're seeing people who are not law enforcement officers getting shot, getting beat up by angry customers. You don't want a cop to get shot or beat up, but a cop has more authority and can enforce law a lot better, especially in our community that so supports our law enforcement officers. Who better to enforce a provision like that than a law enforcement officer, than your host at a restaurant? So anyway, we'll talk about it later. If there's no further discussion, let's close it out at 9:03.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you.